Chapter 470 Meat Sludge. Chapter 470 Meat Sludge. In Tianhuang mainland, be it the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects or 6 Buddhist sects, there were extremely few sects that managed to pass on their legacies and remain standing from the ancient era till now. Among them, countless top factions were drowned in the sands of time, leaving behind nothing but ruins and legends. Corpse refinement cult was one of the rare few super sects that managed to survive from the ancient era till now. Legend in the cultivation world even has it that the roots of corpse refinement cult can be traced back to the primordial era, the brutish period of time where the thousands of races reigned and humans were weak and enslaved. There were countless secret skills in corpse refinement cult, and within them, there was even an ancient supreme sutra called the Corpse Classic. The Corpse Classic contained many secret skills. Even the descriptions for the method of cultivating a battle corpse alone were plenty. Battle corpses were also graded by levels: iron corpse, bronze corpse, silver corpse, golden corpse. 4 foundation establishment cultivators and golden cores of corpse refinement cult, they could only refine iron corpses. Bronze corpses required corpse refinement cult cultivators to be of nascent soul realm and to cultivate an essence spirit before they could be refined. For each battle corpses, the deeper the color, the more power they possessed and the stronger they were. The power of the white-robed cultivator's battle corpse was enough to fight against 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. Furthermore, the battle corpse was not only invulnerable to weapons, water and fire, it even possessed poison. Even 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators won't be able to injure the core of the battle corpse. There was no way the white-robed cultivator would have expected a seemingly delicate cultivator to nearly slice his battle corpse into half with a single casual slash. How terrifying was that strength? A trace of panic flickered through the white-robed cultivator's slightly bulged eyes. Immediately, as though he made some sort of a resolve, the white-robed cultivator conjured hand seals and channeled a secret skill of his sect. Biting his tongue gently, he spat out a mouthful of essence blood that spilled onto the battle corpse's wounds. Heal. The white-robed cultivator shouted softly. Instantly, the frightening injury on the battle corpse started healing at a visible speed as greenish-black meat grew and intertwined together. The battle corpse roared with immense ferocity. At the same time, the aura of the white-robed cultivator turned extremely weak and his gaze dimmed. Swaying to one side, he seemed like he could collapse at any moment. He slapped his storage bag and took out an elixir before swallowing it. It was only then that he recovered some vitality. It was clearly a secret skill similar to blood escape. By sacrificing his body's vitality, he repaired the battle corpse's wounds and triggered it to produce even greater combat strength. The battle corpse reached out with its hands and grabbed Blood Quencher's blade. Blood Quencher was drowned by the endless filthy blood as it was stuck in the battle corpse's body. Gradually, the light on its blade dimmed. Harumphing coldly, Su Zimo withdrew his saber with strength. The battle corpse chose to let the blade slice its palms than to relinquish its grip. Furthermore, it even lunged forward with the momentum, spitting out a ball of oily green smoke that was extremely nauseating. Watch out! Ji Yaoshue warned from within the stone chamber. Earlier on, the corpse's smoke had already destroyed her supreme-grade flying sword. Not only that, the corpse even opened its mouth and bared its bloody fangs, biting towards Su Zimo's neck like a wild beast. Su Zimo frowned and released his blood quencher before retreating. It wasn't because he was afraid of the smoke and those fangs. The corpse was truly way too disgusting that Su Zimo did not wish to touch it with his hands. Su Zimo's retreat revealed an opening in the tunnel momentarily. The eyes of the white-robed cultivator lit up. In truth, he had already thought of retreating the moment Su Zimo attacked with the slash earlier on. While it was meant for the corpse, he knew that he wouldn't be able to survive that attack even if he had 10 lives. When he saw Su Zimo dodge to the side, the white-robed cultivator moved in a flash and sped towards the tunnel since he was unwilling to battle. Su Zimo's eyes flashed with mockery when he saw that. Swiping his storage bag, a huge squarish golden seal appeared in his palms. The Carnate Spirit Weapon, Coiling Dragon Seal. It was extremely easy for Su Zimo to kill this corpse refinement cult cultivator. As long as he channeled his bloodline and made use of his spirit wings together with divine steed fleeting, he would be able to wrap around the battle corpse and strike that person to death. However, earlier on, Suzimo had a thought and recalled this treasure he had just obtained. He was also curious as to how powerful the legendary Carnate spirit weapons were, let alone one that was given to him by the human emperor. Go! Tossing the coiling dragon seal upwards, he pointed and a stream of spirit energy was injected into it from his finger. The coiling dragon seal expanded rapidly and shone with a golden radiance. Hovering in midair like a blazing sun, it was bedazzling and let out a shuddering aura, exuding endless might. The feral battle corpse suddenly seemed as pathetic as an ant against the coiling dragon seal. The coiling dragon seal descended rapidly. Boom! A loud bang sounded when it rammed against the battle corpse's head. Crack! 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 Right after, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. The coiling dragon seal merely paused for a brief moment before continuing down. With a thud, the battle corpse that was a full 10 feet tall was crushed into a pile of foul-smelling meat sludge by the coiling dragon seal, spreading all over the ground without any body left. The white-robed cultivator was about to rush into the tunnel when a blindingly bright seal crashed down, blocking the exit. He spun around hurriedly and a pile of meat sludge splattered onto his pale face. The white-robed cultivator's eyes were widened and his mind went blank, almost shocked silly. In the cultivation world, anyone who wanted to defeat corpse refinement cult cultivators had to try their best to avoid the battle corpse while attacking the actual cultivator. That was because the battle corpses were the indestructible weapons of corpse refinement cult cultivators. Nobody within the same cultivation realm could defeat their battle corpses. If anyone was embroiled in a battle against their battle corpses and could not get out, they would either end up being killed or exhausted to their deaths. That was because battle corpses did not know fatigue. Even if they were completely injured, their strength would not diminish. However, it was different for cultivators. Humans had a limit to their stamina. The white-robed cultivator had cultivated for dozens of years and had been through endless battles against various paragons. However, he had never come across anyone that fought as fiercely as Suzimo. Notwithstanding the fact that Suzimo was fighting the corpse itself, he even almost managed to slice it into two with the first attack. Right after, he even turned the battle corpse into a pile of meat sludge with the second attack. Things had ended just like that. The white-robed cultivator was stunned at the moment. A deathly silence filled the air. Initially, Junhao and Sai Yutong wanted to attack Suzimo together with the battle corpse. But now, they were rooted silly to the spot, the corners of their eyes twitching and their bodies trembling slightly. That was a Carnate spirit weapon. The two of them could clearly see that the huge golden seal that Suzimo summoned at the end shone with 6 spirit patterns. It was obvious that it was a Carnate spirit weapon. The deadly poison chi within the battle corpse's flesh was filthy and could destroy weapons and Dharma treasures. Even Ji Yaoshue's supreme-grade flying sword could not escape the fate of being destroyed. But now, the light on the golden seal did not diminish at all even when it was tainted by the battle corpse's blood and flesh. In fact, it shone more intensely, exuding the dominance of an emperor that looked down on the world. A deep look of envy filled Junhao's eyes. I can be as domineering as that if I get my hands on that treasure. Chapter 471, All Dead. Chapter 471, All Dead. Suzimo's expression changed slightly. The might of the coiling dragon seal had exceeded his expectations. The power that was released was enough to threaten an early-stage golden core. More importantly, an Foundation Establishment Cultivator's Dantian was still in the form of a spirit sea and had yet to form a core. Only golden cores could release the true might of Carnate spirit weapons. Suzimo was looking forward to how amazing the coiling dragon seal would be at that time. There was a squeaking sound. The stone doors opened and Ji Yaoshue came forth. Their eyes met. Suzimo smiled and nodded, reassuring her. Instantly, Ji Yaoshue blushed and pursed a smile in return. Suzimo beckoned gently and the coiling dragon seal shrank into a small, intricate seal before turning into a streak of light that returned to his storage bag. Walking slowly to the exit of the tunnel, he pushed down with his ankle and his blood quencher returned to his palm. Throughout the entire process, the white-robed cultivator, Junhao and Sai Yutong did not dare to move at all and kept quiet out of fear. Every single action and gaze of Su Zimo caused the three of them to feel immense pressure. Their hearts raced fiercely, as if they could die at any moment. This was an almost invincible aura. Their gazes flickered and their minds were bothered by the same thought. How should they escape? The coiling dragon seal did not merely suppress a battle corpse, but also the final bit of determination in the three of them to want to retaliate. The white-robed cultivator was the first to speak. A rare smile was squeezed out of his dreadfully glum face as he cupped his fists. "Fellow Daoist, you are truly strong. I'm very impressed. I'm nothing compared to you. You're someone who can even suppress the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island." Su Zimo looked at the white-robed cultivator with a fake smile. Bearing an awkward expression, the white-robed cultivator forced a chuckle. "You're joking, fellow Daoist. You're the one who's able to suppress the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island with your skills. I'm far inferior." Su Zimo did not reply and waved his saber. Instantly, Blood Quencher shot forth with a murderous blood beam once more. Blood Quencher was a perfect spirit weapon that was infused with Su Zimo's blood after all. Although it was tainted by the battle corpse's filthy blood, its sharpness could not be hidden. Sensing Su Zimo's killing intent, the white-robed cultivator's heart skipped a beat as he remarked hurriedly, "You can't kill me." "Oh," Su Zimo uttered without raising his head. Composing himself, the white-robed cultivator said in a deep voice, "You should know the status of corpse refinement cult in Tianhuang mainland. If you kill me, you'll be hunted down by the sect." "Ha! Even if I kill you, who would know?" Su Zimo smiled gently. The white-robed cultivator was speechless. On the other hand, Junhao and Sai Yutong felt a chilling intent. In other words, what Su Zimo meant was that he was going to kill them all. After killing the three of them, news of this would never ever be spread. There was something else that Su Zimo kept to himself. "Corpse refinement cult. I've even killed quite a few paragons from the Immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sect. You're just one of them." Clang. The blade shuddered and a startling blood beam flashed. When Su Zimo attacked once more, the gigantic blade seemed extremely agile in his hands. His slash forward caused ripples in the void. The white-robed cultivator's expression changed starkly. While that slash did not seem fast, there was an inescapable feeling to it. 4 corpse refinement cult cultivators, losing their battle corpses was as good as losing half of their combat strength. He could not deal with the terrifying saber technique of the Saber Emperor's Sea Calming Manual. A single moment of distraction and he felt his throat go cold, followed by a ripping pain. A red scar appeared on his throat, turning bigger and more defined. The next moment, a blood mist spewed out. "Ee." A strange sound came from the depths of the white-robed cultivator's throat as he let out an indignant expression. Collapsing stiffly forward, the light in his eyes dimmed without any life. His throat was slit with a single slash. After killing the corpse refinement cult cultivator, Su Zimo turned around and walked towards Junhao and Sai Yutong without hesitation. It was the idea of Junhao and the others. I had no choice as well. That's why I chose the wrong path." When he saw that the situation was amiss, Sai Yutong knelt on the ground with a thud. His hand was placed seemingly casually on his storage bag as he bawled without a single shred of dignity as a cultivator. Wiping his snot, Sai Yutong said with a quivering voice, "Fellow Daoist Su, please give me a chance." Sai Yutong did not have any bit of pity at all towards a fence-sitter like Sai Yutong. Today, this man could kneel down and cry before him in order to survive. Tomorrow, this man could stab him in the back instead. Arriving before Sai Yutong, Su Zimo looked down and replied indifferently, "At times, once you choose the wrong path, there's no way back." Sai Yutong's final hope was dashed after hearing Su Zimo's reply. His hand was still on his storage bag. But now, a dagger with a cold glint had suddenly appeared in his palms. Sai Yutong's sobs came to a stop as his expression darkened. With a venomous gaze, he said coldly, "Since you won't allow me to live, I'll kill you first." Grabbing his dagger, Sai Yutong stabbed towards Su Zimo's chest. This was a complete ambush. However, his thoughts could not escape from Su Zimo's spirit perception. The moment Sai Yutang stood up, Su Zimo's palm descended from above and landed heavily on the former's head. Piak. As though it was tofu, Sai Yutang's head was splattered and he died on the spot without a single word. The moment Sai Yutang attacked, Junhao made up his mind and channeled his spirit energy with all his might as well. In a flash, 7 spirit meridians lit up as he charged towards Ji Yaoxue, who was at the entrance of the stone chamber. Right now, she was his only shot at living. As long as he could hold her hostage, he could talk terms with Su Zimo. As Junhao charged, he realized that Ji Yaoxue was motionless and merely looked at him quietly. There was a trace of mockery and pity in her eyes. All of a sudden, from the side of his eyes, Junhao caught sight of a bloodlight shooting towards him at lightning speed. It crackled and was shuddering. The moment Sai Yutang attacked, Su Zimo flung out his blood quencher. Junhao did not have time to react and merely caught sight of the scarlet flash. Right after, an immense pain came from beneath his ribs as he was sent flying by a powerful impact. Clang! Su Zimo's blood quencher cut through Junhao and pinned the latter tightly against the stone walls. The impact was immensely strong and the saber was still shaking after embedding itself in the stone walls. Junhao's eyes and mouth were widened as fresh blood gushed out uncontrollably. The saber had not only penetrated his body, but also destroyed his organs and cut off his life. You! Raising his arm with much struggle, Junhao pointed at Su Zimo, as if he wanted to say something. After a momentary pause, his head tilted to the side and he died with opened eyes. In less than 10 minutes, all 3 of them were dead. Chapter 472, Stir on Tianhuang Mainland. Chapter 472, Stir on Tianhuang Mainland. Zimo, you've saved me once more. Ji Yaoxue beamed brightly and quipped, I won't be able to clear my debt to you in this lifetime. Su Zimo smiled as well. There's no need to speak of such things between us. 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Seems like you've gotten quite a bit of opportunities in the depths of the ancient battlefield. Indeed, I've gotten some. It had to be said that Su Zimo had truly benefited way too much in this ancient battlefield expedition. Notwithstanding the inheritances and treasures, his cultivation realm gained through this 1 year in the ancient battlefield was already enough to make up for dozens of years of cultivation on Tianhuang mainland. Suddenly, Ji Yaoxue's expression changed as she asked, Xiaoning and the others. Su Zimo's group had 6 people when they left. Now that he was the only one who returned, Ji Yaoxue had a bad feeling about things. Don't worry. Su Zimo waved his hand. All of them received their own opportunities and joined some older and more powerful sects. In fact, some of them might have already left the Tianhuang North region. Xiaoning's Elixir Yang sect was located far away in the middle continent. Tianhuang mainland was boundless and vast. If a foundation establishment cultivator wanted to travel from the north region to the middle continent, they would have to be on the road day and night for dozens of years even without resting. That was also without taking into account the possible dangers they might encounter along the way. In reality, it was something that was difficult even for Golden Cause too. Only nascent souls could protect themselves well enough to attempt to travel out from the north region and roam everywhere. It was likely impossible for the siblings to meet one another in the near future after this separation. That was the reason why Su Zimo wanted Night Spirit to stay by Xiaoning's side and look after her. As for Little Fatty, Leng Ru, Ji Chengtian, and Shi Jian, they were worlds apart as well. It was unknown if he would still have the chance to meet them in this lifetime. At that thought, Su Zimo could not help but feel slightly emotional and wistful. Zimo, you're still worried about Blood Crow Palace taking revenge, right? Ji Yaoxue was extremely smart and after slight contemplation, she understood why everyone went their separate ways. Su Zimo had killed the young master of the Blood Crow Palace and even nearly caused the palace lord himself to die in the primordial ruins. The feud between him and them was already irreconcilable. That day, in the palace, right under the nose of the Emperor of Great Ju, the Blood Crow King declared that all the disciples of Ethereal Peak would be buried along with the young master. It was obvious how arrogant he was and the amount of backing he had. While it might be a huge calamity for Su Zimo personally, it was also one for Ethereal Peak. Everyone else of Ethereal Peak could leave, but not him. To turn his back and leave after creating such a mess, leaving Ethereal Peak and his eldest brother, Su Hong, in the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty without any care. That was something that Su Zimo's heart would not allow. Zimo, don't worry. I'll help you plead for mercy with father. Worried that Su Zimo might not take her words for real, Ji Yaoshua continued, if the Blood Crow Palace truly dares to do anything outrageous, the Great Zhou dynasty will definitely not sit by idly and watch. Yes. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. In reality, he knew and could read the situation clearer than anyone. The attitude of the Emperor of Great Zhou towards the Blood Crow King at the sect competition had already made many things clear. Even the Great Zhou dynasty was wary of the Blood Crow Palace's lord. Or rather, it was cautious of the witch race behind it, one of the primordial 9 races. It was almost hopeless to think that the Great Zhou dynasty would interfere in the matter. Yaoshua, prepare yourself. We'll head to the teleportation spot and return to the Great Zhou dynasty. All right. With the year in the ancient battlefield about to end, many cultivators were returning to Tianhuang mainland. Some were ecstatic while some were worried. Some cultivators even had a surreal feeling of escaping a great calamity. They could only heal the trauma in their hearts gradually after returning to their sects in Tianhuang mainland. Right after, heavy news started spreading through the super sects of the cultivation world, akin to gigantic boulders tossed into the middle of lakes and creating massive wave. After 1,000 years, the Saber Emperor's inheritance was obtained by a cultivator and the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea vanished. Right, more than 100 cultivators of Poison Sect were killed by a single person and even Malevolent Earth Sect and Glass Palace were implicated. How savage. Who is he? What sect or faction is he from? I've got no idea. He didn't wear a sect badge. Some say that he's a meek scholar while others say that he looks menacing. Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect received the news almost instantly and their sect masters were enraged. Both sects sent out multiple cultivators to scout out news of that cultivator's background and location. Before the various sects managed to digest that news, an even more shocking piece of news was spread, causing a shock for the super sects and sending a wave across the entire cultivation world. The Human Emperor's Palace appeared. The successor of Divine Phoenix Island appeared at the Human Emperor's Palace and fought against all the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects together. The paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects worked together. Fufu, Divine Phoenix Island's successor sure is unlucky. He must have died without even a corpse left. Who managed to obtain the Human Emperor's inheritance in the end? That's where you're wrong. He suppressed all the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects single-handedly and it was an extremely tragic and shocking battle. What? What did you say? The paragons of Azura sect, Heaven Azura sect, Purple Firmament sect, Chaos Essence sect, Clear Wind Temple, Illusion Fiend cult and Formless Monastery are all dead. While the paragons of the other sects managed to survive and escape, some of them had their arms and roots crippled and it would be tough for them to shine in the future. The elders of the various sects received the news at almost the same time and were in shock and disbelief. What about the sealers? There were more than 10 sealers from the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects together. Are they all trashes? As Golden Cause, can't any of them kill a single Foundation establishment cultivator? Even when 5 sealers joined forces, they failed and died with regret. Pest. Even sealers failed despite working together. The right hand of Divine Phoenix Island's successor is made from a divine phoenix bone and possess an immense might. He was severely injured together with the Fiend sect's Pure Maiden and they entered the Human Emperor's Palace at the same time. Their fates are currently unknown. The elders went silent when they heard that. A long time later, someone sighed deeply. It's a monster incarnate. I don't think it's exaggerated to claim that he's the #1 monster incarnate ever since the ancient times. At the same time, in an unknown location in the Middle Continent, an ancient-looking palace stood erected. A rosy-cheeked old man with a white crown and long robes stood in front of the palace entrance with one hand behind his back. His other hand was in front of him and his fingers were twitching. There was a grey fog that veiled his eyes, making him seem extremely mysterious. Old man, have you divined anything? Behind the old man was a grey-robed man who was slightly plump and had a pale, beardless fan. Holding a folding fan, he asked anxiously. If Su Zimo was here, he would have recognized that this was Lin Xuanji, whom he had encountered by chance at the primordial ruins. The old man in front was the storyteller back in the capital of Great Ju. A long time later, the haze disappeared from the old man's eyes as he frowned while shaking his head. It's true that the human emperor's palace appeared. However, I didn't manage to divine any news of that lad. Strange. Does Divine Phoenix Island truly have such a monster incarnate? The two of them exchanged glances, feeling that there was something odd about this. Sucking his lips, the old man replied, "No matter what, the appearance of the human emperor's palace proves that this is going to be a golden era with countless paragons and monster incarnates created. It's very likely that we'll have a situation similar to the ancient era with multiple emperors arising. Of course, with that, there will also be unimaginable trouble. Let's just wait and see." Chapter 473 Arrival of the Storm. Chapter 473 Arrival of the Storm. Deep in the night, in the Great Ju dynasty. With a bang, a bedazzling column of light lit up in the depths of the palace. Bursting into the skies, it filled the night skies with a resplendent luminescence, attracting countless glares. The geniuses who entered the ancient battlefield have returned. That's right. I wonder how many of the 50 managed to survive. There should be a third of them at the very least. The geniuses selected by the 5 major sects aren't weak. Ethereal peaks Shen Yi and Liu Hui, iridescent clouds palaces perfected being Kang Lang and many other golden cores stood around the column of light expectantly, preparing to await their returning disciples. If nothing went wrong, these cultivators that returned alive from the ancient battlefield would end up being the supports of their sects in the future. The Emperor of Great Ju stood right at the front with a grim expression. A flicker of worry would appear in the depths of his eyes from time to time. Gradually, 2 figures appeared in the middle of the column of light. As time passed by, the 2 figures became increasingly clear. It was Su Zimo and Ji Yaoshua who had returned. The Emperor heaved a sigh of relief. He was relieved as long as Ji Yaoshua was fine. But immediately after, he frowned and thought to himself, there's only the 2 of them. Although the ancient battlefield was a dangerous place, at least 7 people or so managed to return in previous worst-case scenarios. Now that only 2 of them returned, it was not hard to guess that something big must have happened in the ancient battlefield. Shen Yi and Liu Hui did not have smiles on their faces when they saw that Su Zimo was fine. On the one hand, it was because they were worried about the safety of Ji Chengtian and the others. On the other hand, while it was a good thing that Su Zimo was alive, it may not have been the best choice for him to return to the Great Ju dynasty. Apart from Ethereal Peak, the golden cores of the other sects looked extremely grim as they strode forward with huge frowns. Perfected being Yun Shan of Southern Mountains sect cupped his fists slightly. Mr. Mo, my disciple, Shi Jian, is a little foolish and isn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Did he meet with any accidents? No, he was selected by one of the 5 heretical doctrines, Puppet Sect, and left together with them. Su Zimo shook his head. It's good that he's all right. It's his opportunity to be selected by one of the super sects. How rare, how rare. Perfected being Yun Shan nodded his head in gratification. For the sects of the Great Ju dynasty, super sects such as the 9 Immortal sects, 7 Fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 heretical doctrines and 4 unorthodox groups were insurmountable mountain. If a disciple of their sect managed to join them, it would be an enormous feat and those sects could not be any happier. For example, with their connection to Shi Jian, Southern Mountains sect would most likely have the massive backing of Puppet Sect in the future. What happened in there? Why are you 2 the only ones who have returned? Where are the others? Liang Maro is my personal disciple and he was the number 2 of the talisman ranking. His strength is decent and he has a careful nature. There's no way he could have died. Mr. Mo, did my disciple manage to obtain any opportunities? Many golden cores glared at Su Zimo, asking repeatedly with threatening gazes. Su Zimo frowned with a look of impatience. Everyone, please be silent. Ji Yaoshua stood forward and gestured for silence with both hands. Although she was only a princess, her gesture already possessed the dignity of the royal family. The crowd instantly went silent. In an unhurried manner, Ji Yaoshue recounted the events in the ancient battlefield, including Jun Hao's true identity, Jiang Yu's betrayal and Sai Yutong's choice. Everyone was startled and speechless. Nobody expected that this ancient battlefield expedition would have met with such immense dangers. Perfected being Kang Lang's expression was grim as he narrowed his gaze and sneered, "This is only your side of the story. Who knows if you had conspired with Su Zimo to kill my disciple, Sai Yutong? Kang Lang, are you suspecting my daughter?" The emperor turned slightly and glared at perfected being Kang Lang expressionlessly. "Ha, I wouldn't dare to." Chuckling, perfected being Kang Lang looked at Su Zimo deeply and said in a cold voice, "Lad, don't think that you've got the rights to stand shoulder to shoulder with me just because you know how to refine weapons. The grudges between us will have to be settled sooner or later, wait and see." With that, perfected being Kang Lang laughed sinisterly and left the hall. The other cultivators gradually as well after seeing that they wouldn't be able to obtain any news from the two of them. "Take care." Su Zimo bid farewell to Ji Yaoshue. "You too." Ji Yaoshue's head was slightly lowered and her eyes revealed a trace of reluctance. Su Zimo left the palace together with Liu Hui and Xian Yi. Along with Nian Qi of Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop, they boarded a spirit vessel and sped in the direction of Ethereal Peak. A long time after Su Zimo left, Ji Yaoshue was still standing on the spot gazing in the direction he left in, unwilling to leave. The emperor said softly, "Shui, although that man is a rare paragon, it's best for you to not have any contact with him." Ji Yaoshue's heart sank when she heard the emperor's tone. Be it Ethereal Peak or Su Zimo, they are most likely doomed against the impending calamity. After traveling for more than half a month, the four of them finally returned to Ethereal Peak. Ever since that battle at Dongling Valley, Su Zimo had left the sect for many years. Now that he had returned once more, he felt deeply emotional. Nian Qi was curious and surveyed the place intently. The four of them stopped instinctively as they arrived at the tall peak in front of the mountain. Back then, this was where when Xian and Xian Yi accepted Su Zimo into Ethereal Peak. The memories were fresh as yesterday. Liu Hui remarked, "It's a pity that when Xian couldn't wait till you've returned. No matter. If when Xian knows of your current achievements in the afterlife, he'll definitely feel comforted as well." Xian Yi patted Su Zimo on the shoulder encouragingly with a smile. "All right, go take a look around the sect and catch up with everyone. Thereafter, go into seclusion as soon as you can." Xian Yi gazed at the distance with a grim expression as he murmured softly, "I've got a premonition that a storm is about to arrive." Upon returning to Ethereal Peak, Su Zimo visited the disheveled old man first. Thereafter, he visited the sect master and recounted some of the events of the ancient battlefield. In that period of time, Little Crane came over and chirped repeatedly with extreme joy. After not seeing one another for many years, the man and beast were not distant at all and got along like before. Monkey and the spirit tiger had not returned still and their locations and fates were unknown. Senior Crane had already been in seclusion for a year and nothing had happened still. She was the true pillar of support for Ethereal Peak, and if anything happened to her, Ethereal Peak would be destroyed by the impending storm. Su Zimo took a spin around the sect before heading to seclusion. Right now, he was already at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. His aim of entering seclusion was to unlock his 9th Spirit Meridian and become a 9 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. This was an extremely important step that would affect his cultivation path in the future. The firmer his foundation, the better the quality of his condensed golden core and the stronger the golden core phenomenon he would be able to comprehend and obtain. At Extreme Foundation Establishment Realm, Su Zimo's combat strength would also increase in fold. Similarly, he could sense the incoming danger. The only way to tide through the impending storm was by trying his best to raise his cultivation realm. Chapter 474, Crisis. Chapter 474, Crisis. Northwest corner of the Great Zhou Dynasty, Black Crow Mountain. Deep in the forest, in a sinisterly dark area, a blood-stained palace was erected. This day, a piece of news arrived. Master, Su Zimo has returned from the ancient battlefield and has arrived at Ethereal Peak. All right. A blood-robed middle-aged man opened his eyes. They shone with a sinister faint green hue as he said coldly, "I want nothing in the radius of 50 kilometers around Ethereal Peak to remain alive." His voice was extremely chilling and spread to every single corner of Black Crow Mountain. Countless blood crows flew out from Black Crow Mountain, shrieking as they swarmed the skies with their sheer numbers and flew towards Ethereal Peak. 2 days later, Iridescent Cloud's Palace. An order was sent forth that mobilized the sect. Wage war against Ethereal Peak. Throughout the years, all the sects in the territory of Great Jew had harbored coveting thoughts towards Ethereal Peak, Iridescent Cloud's Palace included. Everyone knew that the arrival of the order meant that Iridescent Cloud's Palace was absolutely confident. It was extremely likely that for this battle, a void reversion Tao being, Iridescent Cloud's Palace's founder master, would appear. Perfected being Kang Lang could not help but roar in laughter. Su Zimo, oh, Su Zimo. Even if you managed to cultivate and join Ethereal Peak, so what? At the end of the day, you still can't escape death. Almost at the same time, news spread within True Fire sect that the sect master was leading an army to wage war against Ethereal Peak. True Fire sect's elder, Sima Ji, clenched his fists tightly. He laughed endlessly in a cold manner and sneered, "I've finally waited for this day. Su Zimo, you killed my disciple and shamed me at the sect competition. I'm going to turn you into ashes." Not long after, many cultivators of Southern Mountains sect were mobilized. Azure Frost sect. A few golden cores stood together. Among them was Ji Yaoshua's previous master, Perfected being Yi Ning, who had appeared at the sect competition. She sighed after hearing the news of everything outside. Actually, this was a situation that everyone had predicted long ago. Ever since the death of Ethereal Peak's founder master, they were already weakened and their only support was an aging demon beast. The foundation of Ethereal Peak was stronger than the other 4 major sects and they had been established for a long time. Everyone was coveting the countless treasures and secret skills in their sect. Prior to this, the reason why the other sects did not dare to act recklessly was because they were wary of the old immortal crane that was at Void Reversion Realm. Each of the 5 major sects had a Void Reversion expert holding the fort and maintaining the balance. However, all the golden cores and nascent souls of the sects knew that once the old immortal crane was at the end of her lifespan, the balance would be broken and that would be the moment of Ethereal Peak's annihilation. Normally speaking, the other major sects would wait for dozens of years more. But now, with Blood Crow Palace leading the fight, apart from Iridescent Cloud's Palace, True Fire sect and Southern Mountains sect, there would be other sects and cultivators coming forth to Ethereal Peak to take advantage of the situation. It was most likely the same for Perfected being Yi Ning's Azure Frost sect. Everyone kicks a man who is down. She sighed gently. She could not help but feel regret when she recalled the scholarly green-robed cultivator at the sect competition. Within 10 days, all the sects within the territory of Great Jew heard about this and moved one after another. Their target was Ethereal Peak. So what if you're the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Jew? At the end of the day, you're just doing it for all of us. Notwithstanding the secret skills of Ethereal Peak, there are countless high-grade spirit weapons in Mr. Mo's possession alone. Instantly, the world was moving. Ethereal Peak. Hundreds of golden cores stood in Ethereal Palace, most of them discussing in hushed whispers with grim expressions. Sect Master Ling Yun sat in the middle of everyone, his eyes were closed and he was expressionless. Reporting in, Sect Master. A golden core strode hastily into the hall and said deeply, "Some blood-eyed crows have suddenly appeared in the forest outside the sect and more are gathering." "Got it." Sect Master Ling Yun replied indifferently. He did not open his eyes still. The hearts of many golden cores skipped a beat as they thought to themselves, "It's coming." At the end of the day, they could not avoid this crisis still. Initially, this crisis would take another dozens of years to arrive with the backing of the old immortal crane. However, nobody expected that something would change in this period of time. By some freak accident, Su Zimo was embroiled in an irreconcilable feud with Blood Crow Palace's lord and that resulted in the situation today. It's all Su Zimo's fault. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have made enemies with a sect as strong as Blood Crow Palace. Finally, a golden core could not help but bark with a grim expression. "That's right." Someone else declared, Sect Master, let's just hand over Suzimo. Perhaps it might help to quell the anger of Bloodcrow Palace. That's correct. Why should Ethereal Peak die together for Suzimo's feud? The voices of dissent were growing louder in the hall and many golden cores were moved. Bullshit. The disheveled old man could not help but curse as he blew at his beard with widened eyes. Pointing at the golden cores who spoke, he shouted, how dare you have the cheek to speak of such word? Do you think that we wouldn't have a feud with Bloodcrow Palace if Suzimo wasn't here? Who was the one who killed so many cultivators of our sect in the battle at Dongling Valley? Who was the one who killed Peak Master Wen Xian? The disheveled old man's question caused everyone to go silent. The few golden cores who spoke at the start were quiet as well. Loudly, the disheveled old man hollered, everything else aside, if not for Suzimo, all our disciples at Dongling Valley would have died in the battle. Instead, you guys are talking about his great deed like it was a mistake. Have your consciences been eaten up by dogs? The disheveled old man's angry scolding reverberated in the hall deafeningly. Xian Yi stood up and said grimly, additionally, back at the sect competition, if Suzimo hadn't held the fort, Ethereal Peak would have been thoroughly shamed and turned into a joke of the cultivation world of Great Jew. Countless people would be disheartened if we hand over a disciple as such. That's enough. Opening his eyes, Sect Master Lingyun said calmly, even if Suzimo did not contribute as he did and was merely an ordinary disciple of Ethereal Peak, there's no way we will cast him out. Ethereal Peak wouldn't have survived till this day if we sacrificed our disciples for the sake of survival. At the same time, I'm not able to do something like that either. Everyone has their ambitions and those who want to leave the sect, do it now. I won't stop you. Sect Master Ling Yun swept his gaze across the crowd. Some cultivators cupped their fists and left one after another, but even more chose to stay. Among the crowd, an outstanding girl with withered, yellow hair stood. She smiled gently upon seeing everything unfold and her eyes were bright and moving. Previously, Nian Qi accompanied Suzimo back to Ethereal Peak and had been listening and observing in secret ever since. She wandered everywhere and had no home since she was young. As such, it was hard for her to trust people. Towards such a foreign environment and these new people, she was conflicted and resistant. However, she did not dare to bother Suzimo since he was in seclusion. Yet, as time passed by, her impression of this sect gradually changed. There was a group of lovely cultivators within and there were also righteous people. At that moment, after she heard the words of Sect Master Lingyun, Nian Qi made up her mind that she was going to stay in Ethereal Peak from now on, never forsaking it. Chapter 475 Ignition of the Great Battle. Chapter 475 Ignition of the Great Battle. There were more blood crows gathered at the forest outside, circling above Ethereal Peak in an orderly manner. They formed a gigantic black vortex that covered the skies, like thunderclouds that flickered with scarlet glints. It was extremely pressuring. Darkness fell on Ethereal Peak and it has been 3 days since they saw sunlight. This day, dust billowed from far away followed by a torrential killing intent. The army of cultivators from Bloodcrow Palace had arrived. For the past few years, Bloodcrow Palace's influence had been expanding and they took over all the sects in the vicinity and grew at a rapid pace. By now, they were as good as a 6th major sect. Coupled with the cruel methods of Bloodcrow Palace's lord and his heavenly-defying combat strength, many itinerant cultivators submitted to him one after another. Bloodcrow Palace's current strength had already surpassed the 5 major sect. Leaping into the skies, Ethereal Peak's master, Ling Yun, gazed over with a grim expression. The army from Bloodcrow Palace was densely packed and there were 10,000 cultivators. Among them, there were 100 nascent souls alone and many of them were notorious itinerant cultivators in the cultivation world of Great Jew. There were more than 1,000 golden cores. The rest of them were foundation establishment cultivators and there were no Qi refinement warriors. Qi refinement warriors were almost useless in a clash of this level. Any single flying sword, spirit art, or even the shockwave of the ensuring fight was more than enough to kill a Qi refinement warrior. A blood-robed middle-aged man stood at the front of Bloodcrow Palace's massive army, looking cold with a faint green hue in his eyes. It was Bloodcrow Palace's lord. The palace lord waved his hand and declared icily, "Kill everyone and spare no one." At the same time, Ethereal Peak's master, Ling Yun, waved his arm and yelled, "The sect is on the brink of its extinction. People, fight with all your strength and protect the final sanctuary of our sect." Everyone from Ethereal Peak knew that there was no other way out for them. Bang! 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 In the back mountain, stone doors were pushed apart by tremendous forces one after another as dozens of terrifying auras appeared. Ethereal Peak's nascent souls who were in seclusion had appeared one after another as well. Under the lead of Sect Master Ling Yun, 100 nascent souls and nearly 1,000 golden cores were mobilized. In terms of numbers, they were comparable to Blood Crow Palace. Their formidable foundation was thoroughly shown. However, due to the stringent requirement process of Ethereal Peak, there were not many foundation establishment cultivators and they amounted to slightly more than 2,000. Once the Great Battle was invoked, their foundation establishment cultivators would definitely be disadvantaged. Of course, the final outcome of the battle was not decided from the foundation establishment battlefield, nor was it decided from the Golden Core and Nascent Soul battlefields. The ultimate challenge was between the Void Reversion Expert. Core. The countless blood crows let out ear-piercing cries, charging towards the Ethereal Peak cultivators like a swarm of locusts. It was startling. All of a sudden, a might aura burst forth from within Ethereal Peak, followed by a deafening cry. A figure broke out of seclusion, bearing a head of red hair and exuding a terrifying demonic aura. Although she had an insane might and a sharp gaze, this was a beauty. Senior Crane has come forth from seclusion. A series of cheers sounded from Ethereal Peak and the masses were overjoyed. The old Immortal Crane looked at the countless incoming blood crows and her eyes shone brightly. A mysterious shockwave spread out from her glabella as she suddenly opened her mouth and shot out a fiery stream of flames. Swoosh! The stream of flames spread out and was hundreds of feet tall, incinerating half the skies. Countless blood crows were turned into ashes without being able to make a single sound. Humph! Blood Crow Palace's Lord harumphed coldly and soared into the air. With a single thought, a blood-colored bone staff appeared in his hands with a skull at its tip, emanating a sinister aura. Blood Pattern Curse. Waving his bloodbone staff, the Palace Lord chanted an unidentifiable incantation and the void surged with a terrifying energy feedback. 2 streams of blood light shot forth from the sockets of the skull. As though it was alive, the skull opened its mouth and shot out a green streak of light. The blood and green light fused into a drop of fresh blood. When the drop of blood arrived above the old Immortal Crane's head, it suddenly exploded and spread into a series of mysterious patterns. Descending slowly, it engulfed the old Immortal Crane. Buzz! Buzz! The blood patterns formed a blood-colored circle of light that caused smoke to form each time it made contact with the old Immortal Crane's body. Eventually, it corroded the old Immortal Crane's shirt and a series of burn marks appeared on its fair skin beneath. Core. The old Immortal Crane cried and its blood chi burst forth. Instantly, its body and flesh expanded while its bones changed structures as it transformed. Right in front of everyone, it turned into a massive ferocious bird that was dozens of feet in width, ready to fly with its wings at any moment. Resembling an immortal crane, the ferocious bird had a smudge of red on its head and its body was green. A thin, dense layer of flame burned on its body, emitting a scorching heat, and its beak was red and a full 10 feet long. The Blood Crow Palace's Lord's expression changed as he murmured softly, "So, your true form is actually a pure-blooded ferocious bird." The old immortal crane soared into the skies and the flames on its body burned brightly, purging away the power of the blood curse. Rising into the clouds with its gigantic body, it looked down at the palace lord on the ground with a murderous intent. "Fufu, you might have been a threat to me at your peak. But now, you're nothing but a beast at the end of your lifespan and is nothing to be feared." The palace lord sneered and leaped up. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared above the 9 heavens into the clouds. That was a height that even nascent souls could not reach. Although golden cores could soar into the skies without the use of any external objects, the truth was that there was a limit to the height they could reach, and it was merely about 100 feet. There was an incredibly strong dharmic power between the heaven and earth that restricted cultivators and all living beings immensely. The higher cultivators flew, the greater the pressure they would have to endure. With their essence spirits, nascent souls could greatly resist the restrictions on their bodies set by the heaven and earth and could soar to heights a couple thousand feet high. More than that, one would be in the clouds and their vision and hearing would suffer. At that place where even nascent souls could not reach, only void reversions could fight there. The great battle was invoked beneath Ethereal Peak. Blood Crow Palace's lord and the old immortal crane clashed as well, producing shuddering power shockwaves that attracted the attention of a few void reversions nearby. Those void reversions came from Iridescent Clouds Palace, True Fire Sect, Southern Mountains Sect and Azure Frost Sect. The armies of the four major sects were speeding towards Ethereal Peak under the lead of their void reversion experts. That old beast has sure hidden herself well. To think that she's a ferocious beast of the ancient era, a Bai-Fang. The Bai-Fang was a pure-blooded ferocious beast that did not need to consume food and specialized in the Tao of Fire. Legend has it that the Bai-Fang carried the bloodline of the Phoenix race and was extremely ferocious. While the Bai-Fang looked extremely similar to immortal cranes, their difference was that their head was a full feet wide. It's lucky that the Blood Crow Palace's lord is around. Otherwise, the four of us might have been destroyed by that old beast instead. Yes, the Bai-Fang is old now. Furthermore, I heard that the Blood Crow Palace's lord belongs to one of the 9 primordial races. Even if the Bai-Fang was at its peak, it might not be a match for this guy. Let's go. Let's head over there first to help the Blood Crow Palace's lord kill that old beast as soon as possible. After conversing, the 4 void reversions soared into the skies and vanished in the blink of an eye. It wouldn't be long before the armies of the other 4 major sects arrived at Ethereal Peak. Chapter 476, Fatal Blow. Chapter 476, Fatal Blow. With the fight between the void reversions taking place, nascent souls from both factions soared into the skies one after another to a height of a few thousand feet tall before breaking out into a battle. At that height, the fight between the nascent souls would not affect the Golden Cause and Foundation Establishment cultivators. Every single attack of a nascent soul possessed the might of the heaven and earth, and it was something that Golden Cause couldn't defend against. As for Golden Cause, they left the ground and flew 100 feet into the skies before they started fighting. Countless spirit arts and flying swords streaked, and there were even Golden Core phenomenons. On the ground, Foundation Establishment cultivators collided intensely like 2 massive torrent. Blood Crow Palace did not have the advantage in numbers when it came to nascent souls and Golden Cores. However, they had multiple times the number of Foundation Establishment cultivators of Ethereal Peak. The moment the fight began, Ethereal Peak showed signs of defeat on the Foundation Establishment battlefield. In recent years, most of Ethereal Peak's paragons of the Foundation Establishment realm died in Dongling Valley. The rest, such as Ji Chengtian, Leng Ru and the others, obtained their own opportunities and left the territory of the Great Zhu dynasty. The remaining Foundation Establishment cultivators in the sect had no leader, and the strongest among them was only at 5 Meridian Foundation Establishment with a few others at 4. As for the 9,000-odd Foundation Establishment cultivators on Blood Crow Palace's side, there were 2 of them at 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment and dozens at 5. In the ancient battlefield, especially at the core regions where battles were plenty, 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators were common sight, and only 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment cultivators could protect themselves. However, in the territory of Great Zhu, the environment was not as favorable as the ancient battlefield, and it was almost the limit for any cultivator to unlock 6 Spirit Meridian. Bang! 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 The moment the battle began, Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators were already showing signs of defeat. There was nothing to compensate for the difference in numbers and strength. The most eye-catching cultivator on the side of Ethereal Peak was an outstanding young girl. This outstanding young girl was not old, and her features were intricate with a straight nose bridge. Her eyes shimmered like diamonds, but her hair was withered, yellow and messy without any luster. This young girl was none other than Nyan Qi. After cultivating for less than 2 years, She was already at the peak of foundation establishment and had already unlocked 3 spirit meridians. It was also because of Nian Qi's presence that the ethereal peak foundation establishment cultivators were not instantly overwhelmed and defeated. Controlling her flying sword with one hand, she wielded a saber in the other and charged into the Blood Crow Palace crowd, cleaving left and right. Initially, back when Nian Qi did not have any spirit qi in her body, she was already able to lift the mystic gold silk armor which weighed a ton. It could be said that she had an innate godly strength. Now that she had entered the path of cultivation, her strength had grown even more and she was like a tiger who had obtained wings. Although she was only at 3 Meridian Foundation establishment, she could kill 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and even face off against 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. Swinging her saber widely, Nian Qi was completely following Su Zimo's previous style without any complicated movements. He was overwhelming everything with brute force. Unable to defend against her, a 4 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was cut into 2. Gradually, the 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators of Blood Crow Palace surrounding Nian Qi increased and even 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators had targeted her. Let's join forces and kill that girl first. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator yelled. Bang! 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 Swoosh! 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 At least 10 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators attacked Nian Qi at the same time. 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators released their spirit arts and flying swords as well, unleashing a flurry of attacks at Nian Qi. Instantly, Nian Qi descended into danger. She had already charged into the depths of the Blood Crow Palace faction a long time ago and was far away from the ethereal peak faction. Right now, she was like a helpless leaf floating in a raging sea. Nian Qi did not wish to die. She wanted to continue staying in ethereal peak and following her young master. However, she knew that in such a situation where everyone could barely fend for themselves, no one could save her. The only way she could survive was if she fought for herself. Against the attacks that came from all directions, Nian Qi shivered and channeled blood qi with all her might. Gradually, her eyes turned into a mysterious shade of blue, akin to the color of the deep ocean. A terrifying aura exuded from within her. It was as though an ancient power had been awakened. Ah! Roaring into the skies, Nian Qi let out an ear-piercing shriek. Her initially wrinkly hair turned silky smooth, swaying on its own and giving off a bright luster. Although she had nothing beneath her feet, she rose slowly into the air and stood upright. It was like a godly being of the universe with a pair of azure blue eyes and golden dancing hair. Her magnificence was outstanding and blinding. That scene did not cause much of a stir to the golden cause and nascent souls. No matter what, Nian Qi was just a foundation establishment cultivator. While the aura that she suddenly gave off was terrifying and even shuddering, it was not strong enough to threaten the golden cause. However, thousands of feet above the clouds, the expression of Blood Crow Palace's lord who was embroiled in a battle currently changed. His gaze penetrated the voids and landed on Nian Qi. Could it be? The palace lord's eyes shimmered, as if he had recalled something. On the battlefield, just as Nian Qi was about to be drowned by the countless spirit arts and weapons, a burst of energy shot forth from within her. Buzz! The spirit weapons that were arriving from all directions froze in midair. Even the spirit arts shook violently before dissipating. All the foundation establishment cultivators present were shocked when they saw that. A 3 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator had managed to defend against the full-powered attacks of 10 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators and 2 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. That scene had already surpassed everyone's knowledge. It was a 3-level gap right there. After a momentary pause, all the spirit weapons flew back in reverse and Nian Qi's gaze gradually dimmed. She turned extremely weak and fell from midair, as though she had lost all her strength. Caw, caw. The sound of a crane echoed out as a green streak of light shot by, carrying Nian Qi before retreating at an even faster speed. The one that saved Nian Qi was none other than Little Crane. Ha 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 ha. Right then, a series of laughter broke out from the horizons far away. I'm Dao being Jing Ming of Iridescent Clouds Palace. Greetings, Blood Crow Palace's lord. I'm Dao being Liao Yuan of True Fire Sect, here to assist the Palace Lord. I'm Dao being Laro Yang of Southern Mountains Sect. I'm Dao being Han Ming of Azure Frost Sect, here to help the Palace Lord kill that old beast. 4 terrifying auras surged over and climbed thousands of feet into the clouds instantly, surrounding the old immortal crane. The ethereal peak cultivators felt their hearts sink. The immortal crane was old and it did not have a clear advantage against Bloodcrow Palace's lord. But now, there were 4 more void reversion expert spirit vessels sped over from the horizon with a murderous intent. Not long after, cultivators of the other 4 sects arrived. There were a full 200 nascent souls and 2,000 golden cores combined from the other 4 sect. Together, there were more than 10,000 Foundation establishment cultivators. The insertion of such a massive amount of power into the battlefield was almost a fatal blow for Ethereal Peak. Initially, Ethereal Peak was holding its ground on the nascent soul and golden core battlefields. But now, all 4 battlefields of Ethereal Peak had fallen into an encirclement and could collapse at any moment to be entirely annihilated. Almost at the same time, a deafening bang sounded from a cave abode within Ethereal Peak. A figure had broken out of seclusion. Chapter 477, Desperate Situation. Chapter 477, Desperate Situation. With the addition of the other 4 major sects, the situation of the battle changed. The old immortal crane was fighting 1 against 5 and spread its wings, causing gusts of wind to howl and the clouds to shift endlessly. Dharmic powers filled the skies as it roared in anger, fighting with its fullest strength. Although the old immortal crane was aged, it still had the remaining dominance as a pure-blooded ferocious bird. Phew! 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 It released a shocking demonic skill and tens of thousands of feathered wings shot forth from its body. Burning with scarlet flames, each feathered wing was like an apocalyptic spear. Shooting forward fiercely, they tore through the voids and left countless holes. Let a blood curse mirror be formed with my blood. The Bloodcrow Palace's lord bit his fingertip and flicked out a drop of fresh blood. Waving his bone staff, he guided that drop of blood and drew an obscure arc in midair. Chanting an incantation, he created a mirror of blood water swiftly before him. The flurry of red feathered wings shot over and created blood waves as they collided against the surface of the mirror before their flames were extinguished. The other 4 void reversions did not dare to be careless and defended with all their might. Instantly, dharmic powers surged and runes appeared, shaking the world as endless light burst forth. The void was illuminated and it seemed as though the firmaments were collapsing. That demonic technique had expended almost all of the old immortal crane's remaining life essence. Its gaze dimmed slightly, no longer as sharp as before. Not far away from Ethereal Peak, an army of cultivators clad in armor appeared in the void. All of them stood upright in midair wielding long spears, looking stoic. It was an army of golden cores. A carriage was escorted in the middle of the army. In front of the carriage stood 2 people, a man and a woman. The middle-aged man wore yellow robes and frowned deeply. Looking at the great battle above the clouds, he shook his head and sighed. Schwer, as you wished, I've brought you here. You can see for yourself now that it's going to be tough for Ethereal Peak to avoid this calamity. The man and woman were the Emperor of Great Ju and Ji Yaoshue. Ji Yaoshue could not help but ask, Father, why do you refuse to lend them a hand? Our Great Ju dynasty clearly has more than 1 void reversion to back us up. The Emperor shook his head in silence. Ji Yaoshue continued, furthermore, I heard that there's a patriarch in Great Ju who is still alive and he is a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord. The Dharma characteristic realm came after the void reversion realm. Those that are in the void reversion realm gain the title of Tao being while those in the Dharma characteristic realm gain the title of Tao Lord. After a moment of silence, the Emperor said softly, Schwer, actually, the Patriarch was the one who made the decision to not interfere. Why? Ji Yaoshue was in disbelief as she questioned, as a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, can't the Patriarch beat a void reversion Tao being? What are you guys scared of? Highs. The Emperor gave a deep sigh. If the Patriarch comes forth, he can naturally suppress the Bloodcrow Palace's Lord. However, The thing is that this guy's background is extremely touchy. He is one of the primordial 9 races. So what if he's one of the primordial 9 races? Weren't they defeated by the ancient emperors of the human race in the primordial era all the same? Ji Yaoshue could not understand. As though he recalled something, a hint of fear flickered through the depths of the emperor's eyes as he shook his head. The might of the primordial 9 races is far beyond what you can imagine. If we really anger the experts of the primordial 9 races, notwithstanding the Great Zhou dynasty, even the entire north region of Tianhuang mainland would experience a catastrophe. Back then, the patriarch witnessed and had been through a similar catastrophe personally. Pausing for a moment, the emperor did not continue on that topic. Let's hope that Su Zimo has already left Ethereal Peak. On the other side, 2 outstanding women with voluptuous figures stood within the ancient forest. One of them was older, but there were no signs of aging on her face. Instead, she gave off a mature and charming aura from head to toe. The other was dressed in a long pink dress and wore a veil, looking like she was a young girl. Auntie Ji, since Su Zimo hasn't shown himself yet, I suppose he must have already left and is no longer at Ethereal Peak, the girl in pink said with joy. The 2 of them were the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House, Ji Yushi, and the pure maiden of the fiend sects, Demonis Ji. That had better be the case. Given the circumstances, he would die for sure if he appeared. Ji Yushi's expression was unchanged. The Blood Crow Palace's lord is someone from the witch race and they are one of the primordial 9 races. The impact left on the cultivation world after that catastrophe 10,000 years ago was way too deep. Let alone the patriarch of the Great Zhou dynasty, even those of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects would be cautious and not want to provoke the primordial 9 races. Demonis Ji shook her head. That's not for sure. That senior of the Fiend sect definitely fears nothing. Pausing for a moment, Demonis Ji tugged at Ji Yushi's sleeves and asked, Auntie Ji, haven't you sent the message yet? What did that senior say? What can he say? Ji Yushi pouted her lips. He is cold and merciless. When he heard my message, he didn't even have any reaction mentally. Don't pin your hopes on him. At Ethereal Peak, the battle was intensifying. On the Nascent Soul battlefield, Sect Master Ling Yun was already at perfected Nascent Soul Realm and was a step away from Void Reversion Realm. With his terrifying combat strength, he fought at the front and held on bitterly. It was a complete defeat for the Golden Core and Foundation Establishment battlefield. Nian Qi was exhausted and frightfully pale. Lying on Little Crane, it was difficult for her to recover in a short period of time. The Foundation Establishment cultivators of Blood Crow Palace and the other 4 major sects charged over like a relentless torrent, rushing at the Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment faction repeatedly. During this period of time, some of the smaller sects and itinerant cultivators of Great Zhou seized the opportunity to take part in the battlefield, ready to take advantage of the situation as well. Without Nian Qi, the Ethereal Peak Foundation Establishment cultivators were retreating repeatedly, leaving behind a trail of corpses. Blood flowed like a river and it was extremely tragic. The situation on the Golden Core battlefield was even more pressing. Golden Cores of Ethereal Peak were dying repeatedly. True Fire Sect Sima Ji controlled 4 flaming flying swords that streaked through the crowd endlessly, leaving streams of scorching sword chi. Where's that little bastard, Su Zimo? Are you still going to continue hiding? Now that the outcome was set, Sima Ji roared in laughter gleefully. Perfected being Kang Lang controlled his flying sword and his long, narrow eyes shone with a cold glint. The entire Ethereal Peak will have to die together just for the sake of a Foundation Establishment cultivator, Su Zimo. His remark caused the Ethereal Peak faction, which was already getting defeated steadily, to turn even messier. To hell with you. The disheveled old man had a fiery temper and cursed. However, immediately after, his slight distraction caused him to suffer a gash on the wound from perfected being Kang Lang and blood flowed like a stream. Xian Yi summoned his hexagonal sword formation and had to give it his best before he could rescue the disheveled old man. Fufu, open your eyes properly and take a look. Perfected being Kang Lang pointed at the Foundation Establishment battlefield beneath their feet and sneered, Ethereal Peak's Foundation Establishment cultivators are almost completely dead. Xian Yi and the disheveled old man's hearts skipped a beat. On the ground, Nian Qi's group retreated step after step and were already at the base of the mountain. Of the 2,000 Foundation establishment cultivators, there were only a few hundred left battling bitterly right now. All of the disciples carried injuries and panted heavily. They were almost at their limits. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Right then, 10 streaks of dark light shot forward from the back of the mountain, sending forth a shuddering impact. As the 10 dark lights streaked through, a terrifying air current surged and smashed the tiles on the ground. The mud was overturned and 10 long ravines were formed. Fast as lightning, a green-robed cultivator surged over with a murderous intent. Flapping his spirit wings furiously, he wielded a gigantic moon-colored bow and exuded a torrential aura. Chapter 478 Extreme Foundation Establishment, the Second Human Emperor. Chapter 478 Extreme Foundation Establishment, the Second Human Emperor. The 10 dark lights arrived instantly and shot into the crowd viciously. Poof, poof, poof. Flashes of blood appeared. The 10 dark lights were so strong that their momentums were still ferocious even after penetrating the bodies of more than 10 cultivators. They were unstoppable. The terrifying power of the dark lights even surged through some of the cultivators after passing through them, causing them to explode with their limbs flying everywhere. All the ethereal peak cultivators witnessed the massive torrent formed by more than 20,000 Foundation establishment cultivators stop just because of 10 dark lights that were streaking through. Within the torrent, there were 10 lines filled with countless corpses and endless blood. The cultivators of Blood Crow Palace, the other 4 major sects and multiple small sects had swarmed over. Coupled with itinerant cultivators from all over the place, they were way too densely packed. The 10 dark lights were extremely lethal. There were at least a few hundred Foundation establishment cultivators who died on the spot. With more than 20,000 cultivators on the Blood Crow Palace's faction, the few hundred dead Foundation establishment cultivators could not be considered as a great amount of damage. However, it created a trauma within everyone's hearts. Su Zimo. Someone with a keen eye exclaimed upon recognizing the identity of the green-robed cultivator. No wonder the dark lights were so terrifyingly lethal. Hurry, look. The bow in his hand is a perfect spirit weapon. Indeed. Many Foundation establishment cultivators were jealous and were raring to give it a shot. They had heard long ago that Su Zimo was the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Jew and the lousiest weapons in his storage bag were supreme-grade spirit weapons. In fact, he even possessed perfect spirit weapons. The rumors were true. Many Golden Cores turned to look from the Golden Core battlefield. On the sect competition, Su Zimo had made a name for himself, and how could anyone not know or have not heard of the title of the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Jew? True Fire Sect's Sima Ji's eyes lit up as he roared in laughter. Good, good. Su Zimo, you've got guts to appear. I'll have you pay for my disciple's death. Perfected being Kang Lang's long, narrow eyes were locked on Su Zimo. Looking down from above, he sneered, Su Zimo, so what if you manage to join Ethereal Peak? You still can't escape death. A few years ago, back in Pingyang Town, I should have killed you together with that beast. No matter how you struggle, you can't fight against the cycle of your fate. Su Zimo's gaze was indifferent as he stood on midair and surveyed the surroundings. His gaze seemed to contain an enormous might that could overwhelm and overpower everything. The Foundation establishment cultivators on the side of Blood Crow Palace felt their hearts clench when they met with Su Zimo's eyes. That person gave off a frightening aura. That was an aura that was built from endless bloodshed and countless corpses. In the ancient battlefield, even many paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend cultivation sects died in his hands. Since the strongest cultivators here were only at 6 Meridian Foundation establishment at best, none of them could withstand Su Zimo's aura. When he saw the corpses of Ethereal Peak disciples on the ground, Su Zimo's killing intent spewed out of his eyes. Die. Putting away his moon concealment bow, Su Zimo's sleeves waved and 18 supreme-grade flying swords appeared. However, all 18 of them disappeared in the blink of an eye, forming ripples in the void, as though fishes were gliding through water. Not good. That's Ethereal Peak's secret skill. Everyone, watch out. Ah! Someone screamed tragically. Sword light flashed and a few 5 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators died on the spot without any chance to fight back at all. Condense. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator crushed multiple protection talismans and released High Sect's secret skill. Right after, he took out a supreme-grade defensive shield, used it to block in front of him. Clang. The flying sword did not pause at all upon colliding with his supreme-grade shield, causing the latter to explode immediately. Poof, poof, poof. Against Su Zimo's flying sword, his secret skills and protection talismans were akin to paper and were disintegrated instantly. A flash of blood appeared and a gigantic head fell down neatly. A 6 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was dead. The Blood Crow Palace faction was in chaos and the expressions of many cultivators changed. How could that be? They were both supreme-grade spirit weapons, but why did the other party's flying sword destroy the shield immediately? Unless... Many cultivators turned over instinctively. Pest. In midair, underneath Su Zimo's green robes, spirit meridians shone one after another in a bedazzling matter, wrapping around his body like metal chains. 1, 2, 3. 9 spirit meridians. Was it a hallucination? Many cultivators rubbed their eyes and looked again before gasping. Pest. There were a full 9 spirit meridians. Even 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators would be able to barbarically suppress the entire Foundation establishment battlefield, let alone a 9 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. As Su Zimo stood on midair, his Dantian's spirit sea churned rapidly and rich spirit energy surged through his 9 spirit meridians. He was like a god of the universe with a mighty aura. Many cultivators were aghast. The Foundation establishment cultivators were not the only ones. Even the Golden Cores and Nascent Souls were shocked when they saw what was going on. In the territory of Great Jew, it has been 1,000 years since there was even an 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. As for 9 Meridian Foundation establishment, ever since the ancient era, there had never been a second person to reach that realm apart from the human emperor. The legends are true. The 9th Spirit Meridian can truly be unlocked. Extreme Foundation establishment, the second human emperor. A wary look flashed through perfected being Kang Lang's eyes, followed by a feeling of trepidation. It was lucky that Ethereal Peak was on the brink of annihilation and Su Zimo wouldn't be able to escape death. Otherwise, if that lad were to grow further, who in the territory of Great Jew would be able to stop him? He is the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Jew and now, he's even at the Extreme Foundation establishment realm. Once he forms a core, he would definitely develop a phenomenon as well. Sect Master Ling Yun sighed internally. Such was the cruelty of fate. They could only blame the sect for being unlucky. If they had not met with such a calamity, with talents such as Ji Chengtian, Leng Ru and the others, they would definitely rise to be the #1 sect of the Great Jew dynasty. As for Su Zimo, his accomplishments would even be more limitless. In fact, he might even be able to lead Ethereal Peak to become one of the top factions of Tianhuang mainland. Alas! The Blood Crow Palace's lord narrowed his eyes and his killing intent deepened. His personal feud with Su Zimo aside, the fact that this lad was at Extreme Foundation establishment meant that he had to be killed. A second human emperor must not be allowed to appear on Tianhuang mainland. The 18 supreme-grade flying swords streaked through the crowd and none of the Foundation establishment cultivators could defend at all. It was a complete massacre. The massive flood formed by more than 20,000 Foundation establishment cultivators was punctured and pushed back by Su Zimo single-handedly. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was reinvigorated. At that moment, Su Zimo flapped his spirit wings and rose into the air. He was actually arriving at the Golden Core battlefield 100 feet high. "Zimo, hurry back down," the disheveled old man shouted hurriedly when he saw that. The fight between Foundation establishment cultivators would only take place on the ground and no one would soar into the skies 100 feet high. Given the chaotic battlefield, the flying swords and spirit arts of Golden Cores carried an absolutely destructive power against Foundation establishment cultivators. To everyone, Su Zimo's move was complete suicide. Ha 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 ha. Composing himself, Sima Ji roared into laughter. Even if you're at extreme foundation establishment, you're still just a foundation establishment cultivator. Everything is futile before you form a core, and you'll never ever be able to experience the power of being at Golden Core realm. It's been a long time since I've experienced the feeling of murdering a talent. Perfected being Kang Lang smiled gently and said coldly, Su Zimo, thank you for granting me that feeling today. Chapter 479 Ancient Dragonification Manual. Chapter 479 Ancient Dragonification Manual. Swoosh. Many Foundation Establishment cultivators and Golden Cores unleashed their attacks towards Su Zimo, who was standing in midair. Instantly, hundreds and thousands of spirit weapons and arts swarmed forward, the void quaked and the entire world dimmed instantly. The Golden Cores of Ethereal Peak were disadvantaged in numbers after all. By this point of the battle, Xian Yi and the others were thoroughly exhausted and he could not even conjure a sword formation. Embroiled in battle with hundreds of Golden Cores, Xian Yi and the others could not pull themselves out to assist Su Zimo at all. Furthermore, even if they could, all of them would most likely die against such intense and terrifying attack. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's black hair swayed without any wind and his eyes shone with a deep glint. Suddenly, a shuddering aura burst forth from within his body. It was an ancient and vicissitude aura that was awakened. When the spirit weapons and arts arrived in Su Zimo's vicinity, they slowed down as though they had entered a swamp until finally, they could not advance at all. Stopped. The flurry of spirit weapons that shone resplendently as well as the shimmering spirit arts hovered in midair motionlessly. Many cultivators were shocked. How could that be? The next moment, an even more shocking scene appeared that caused chills to run down everyone's heart. An extremely long illusory figure of a living being appeared around Su Zimo, hovering in midair. Gradually, it materialized as flesh started forming. The living being was filled with green scales that shimmered coldly. One after another, sharp spikes protruded from its back and its fangs and claws were extremely sharp while its horns stood proudly. Its eyes were extremely cold and domineering. What's going on? Is that a true dragon? Against the gaze of the azure dragon, everyone felt like they were as insignificant as ants. The Foundation Establishment cultivators on the ground broke out in sweat and suffocated. Unable to withstand that sort of might, they shuddered and almost knelt on the ground to kowtow. Even the Golden Cores in midair were stricken and frightfully pale. What is that? The 6 void reversions above the clouds were shocked. The Ancient Dragonification Manual was a secret skill unique to the human emperor. Ever since the ancient era, Su Zimo was the second person to cultivate it successfully, and by now, almost no one recognized that secret skill. Even the gaze of Bloodcrow Palace's lord was a little lost. That azure dragon looked familiar, but it was much smaller, like a young dragon. Even so, the palace lord felt a sense of trepidation as he recalled that terrifying encounter back in the primordial ruins, and a hint of fear flashed past his eyes. Crack, crack, crack. A series of ear-piercing shrieks rang. Against the immense pressure, cracks started appearing on the countless spirit weapons that were initially hovering in midair. Suddenly, they shattered, scattering onto the ground like scrap metal. Only superior and supreme-grade flying swords were able to remain intact. Countless spirit arts dissipated as well. The crowd was in an uproar. How terrifying did his power have to be such that spirit weapons couldn't endure it and shattered on the spot? The azure dragon was lifelike with intact flesh and coiled around Su Zimo's body, spiraling upwards like a variant beast that was guarding him. As Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings, the gaze of the azure dragon above him shifted as well. The man and dragon moved in tandem. Nobody dared to meet with their gazes at all. Su Zimo's eyes were like lightning and he suddenly took a deep breath, puffing his chest. The azure dragon coiling around him took a deep breath as well and its body expanded extensively. Raising its chest, a tremendous air current surged and formed a series of cyclone in midair. There was a slight pause. Both of them opened their mouths and let out a deafening roar that could break metal and rocks. Roar. Su Zimo was also letting off a dragon roar. In that instant, the entire world shook and the weather changed. Poof, poof, Poof! The Foundation establishment cultivators closest to Suzimo were unable to defend and their bodies ruptured, turning into blood mists without corpses. He was roared to death. The Foundation establishment cultivators that were slightly further also bled from all 7 orifices. Their gazes dimmed and they collapsed to the ground, dead. Right away, thousands of Foundation establishment cultivators died. Right now, Suzimo was at extreme Foundation establishment and he had already attained greater mastery of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness's orifice clearing section. His organs and orifices possessed shocking strength. After releasing the ancient dragonification manual together with Thunderclap Kill, he instantly created an incomparably lethal impact. There was no way Foundation establishment cultivators could endure it as they were shocked to death on the spot. After the dragon roar, silence ensued. Corpses were strewn all over the Foundation establishment battlefield as their blood formed rivers. It was like a scene from hell. That single dragon roar crushed the hearts of many Foundation establishment cultivators present. The cultivators that wanted to take advantage of the situation initially fled far away, not daring to turn back. Although there were still more than 10,000 Foundation establishment cultivators from Bloodcrow Palace and the other 4 major sects, none of them dared to advance and retreated instinctively. Everyone was trying their best to keep their distance from Suzimo and they shivered with fear in their eyes. He killed thousands of Foundation establishment cultivators with a single roar. Even the golden cores and nascent souls present had never witnessed such methods, let alone the Foundation establishment cultivators present. The dragon roar even caused some of the golden cores that were facing Suzimo directly to clutch their ears in pain. Their bodies swayed and they nearly fell from midair. With a murderous intent, Suzimo glared at perfected being Kang Lang and said coldly, "You guys actually think you can kill me with your standards? Go." Suzimo pointed forward. The azure dragon coiling around him soared into the air and let out a torrential aura. Bearing its fangs and claws, it rammed 3 golden cores that stood at the front instantly, crushing their bodies entirely. Golden cores were dead. Furthermore, they died in the hands of a Foundation establishment cultivator. In the cultivation world, it was still rather common for cultivators to kill enemies that were minor realms above their levels. However, it was almost impossible for them to do that to enemies who were major realms above their levels. But right now, everyone witnessed it with their very eyes. At extreme Foundation establishment together with the ancient dragonification manual, Suzimo now possessed the capabilities to kill golden cores. Another few golden cores attacked and released powerful spirit arts, conjuring pairs of heavenly encompassing palms that wanted to grab the young azure dragon. Roar. The azure dragon's body shone brightly and it roared. Charging before the few of them, it opened its gigantic mouth and devoured them. It took a couple of chomps and blood streamed down from the side of its mouth. Evil dragon, how dare you act so brazenly? Dozens of golden cores attacked at the same time. Their terrifying spirit energies created a series of chains that restricted the azure dragon. The azure dragon struggled and its body let out shocking strength, crushing the spirit energy chains of the golden cores. When it soared into the skies once more, it charged in front of perfected being Kang Lang. Bang! Perfected being Kang Lang was expressionless and a sky spread out behind him. Filled with resplendent light, it was bedazzling and shot forth countless spirit lights with an alarming aura. It was a golden core phenomenon. Bang! 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 The azure dragon charged at perfected being Kang Lang's golden core phenomenon repeatedly, letting out shuddering echoes. A moment later, the azure dragon dissipated alongside perfected being Kang Lang's golden core phenomenon. The crowd was shocked. A secret skill released by a Foundation establishment cultivator was able to go against a golden core phenomenon. If Suzimo was at golden core realm, that azure dragon would be even more terrifying and could very likely devour perfected being Kang Lang in a single mouthful. Chapter 480 Fighting Golden Cores. Chapter 480 Fighting Golden Cores. Perfected being Kang Lang broke out in cold sweat. He was at late-stage golden core and yet, even after releasing his golden core phenomenon, he merely matched a single secret skill released by Suzimo. This was the first time that perfected being Kang Lang realized that the inexperienced and arrogant scholar of the yesteryears had surpassed his control and expectations. Back then at the sect competition, Su Zimo merely took advantage of the situation to suppress and shame him using his identity as the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Jew. But now, this scholar was standing toe-to-toe with him in a battle. The difference between the two of them was almost an entire major realm. In the past, perfected being Kang Lang cultivated to 6 Meridian Foundation establishment before forming his core. He managed to succeed while forming a golden core phenomenon of his own. At that point, he felt that his potential was not inferior to others and at the very least, he was among one of the top few golden cores within the territory of Great Jew. But right now, in front of Su Zimo, all his achievements dimmed in comparison. Perfected being Kang Lang could not help but admit he made a wrong judgment in that small town back then. Time could not be reversed and there were no medicine for regrets in the world. Right now, the only way out for him was to use everything he had to try and kill Su Zimo. He must not be allowed to continue to grow. That was the only thought remaining in perfected being Kang Lang's mind. Suddenly, True Fire Sect Sima Ji raised his voice. This lad has just released his secret skill and it must have taken a toll on his spirit energy. He won't be able to release it a second time. An Azure Frost Sect Golden Core yelled, "That's right. Everyone, don't panic. There's nothing to fear about this lad." Before that person could complete his sentence, his vision turned dark, as though an enormous mountain was shrouding over his head, covering the skies. With a frightening aura, it suddenly collapsed. More than 10 golden cores stood beneath the mountain and they attacked one after another, wanting to destroy that mountain peak. Clang, clang, clang. One after another, the spirit weapons were repelled. Countless spirit arts clashed against the mountain peak and let out ringing sounds. Yet, they were still unable to slow the speed of its crash. The golden cores were frightfully pale as they tried to flee hurriedly. However, it was a pity that it was too late by then. Boom! A deafening noise echoed. The void shook endlessly. On the spot, more than 10 golden cores were crushed and turned into meat sludge, seeping into the mud beneath and could not be differentiated. That is a carnate spirit weapon. He actually has a carnate spirit weapon. A series of exclamations sounded and everyone's gazes landed on that shining golden seal. That gigantic seal was squarish and golden with a divine dragon etched onto it in a lifelike manner. That was the coiling dragon seal that Su Zimo obtained in the human emperor's palace. Su Zimo beckoned gently and the coiling dragon seal shrank, returning to his palm. Perfected being Kang Lang, Sima Ji, and all the other golden cores were red with envy. They glared at the small golden seal in Sima Ji's palm and their breathings got heavier. After entering nascent soul realm, cultivators would be able to make use of dharmic weapons. In other words, for golden cores, carnate spirit weapons were the best weapons they could make use of. Their combat strength would double at the very least if they had a carnate spirit weapon and it would be extremely for them to kill enemies above their levels. However, carnate spirit weapons were way too rare and nobody ever sold those in the free market. In the territory of Great Jew, treasures such as carnate spirit weapons had not appeared for hundreds of years. Seems like you've benefited plenty in the ancient battlefield. Perfected being Kang Lang said coldly, "That's good as well. I'll wait to get my hands on your treasures and secret skills after killing you. The treasures are right in my hands. We'll just have to see if you've got the life to use them." Su Zimo sneered and propped up the coiling dragon seal with his left hand. It shone with 6 spirit patterns in a dazzling manner, as though he was carrying a blazing sun. He swiped his storage bag with his right hand and a gigantic blood-colored saber appeared in his palm. Its blade quivered and 5 blood patterns shone. A blood beam expanded followed by the spreading of a nauseating stench of blood. It was the perfect spirit weapon, Blood Quencher. Kang Lang, prepare to die. Su Zimo's gaze burned like a torch and he yelled. Propping the seal with his left hand while wielding his saber with his right, he strode widely towards perfected being Kang Lang with a murderous aura. In the face of hundreds of golden cores, Su Zimo was advancing instead of retreating. Xian Yi and the others exchanged glances as they charged forward together with invigorated expressions. trying to relieve as much of Suzumo's burden as possible. You must have a death wish. A Southern Mountains sect cultivator wielded a long rod and burst forth with his blood chi, aiming for Suzumo's head. Splash! Suzumo channeled his bloodline and the sound of a tsunami tide echoed. Swoosh! He did not even look at the incoming rod and slashed in reverse, meeting the attack with another attack as he released his incomparable countercurrent stance. The pupils of the Southern Mountains sect cultivator constricted and his heart skipped a beat in shock. His motions slowed down for a moment due to the effect on his mental state by the saber force. Flashes of blood appeared. That man was cut into two from the middle and his organs and intestines spilled out, giving off a nauseating stench. Phew! A streak of light burst through the void and arrived instantly. Without turning to look, Suzumo raised his gigantic seal and repelled the incoming flying sword. At the same time, he shuddered and slowed down. Although Xian Yi and the others held back a portion of the golden cores, there were still more than 100 golden cores who attacked Suzumo at the same time, causing flying swords, spirit arts, and talismans to fill the skies with resplendent light. Clang! 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 Spinning the gigantic seal with his left hand, Suzumo released the sea-calming 5 stances his right and took on the incoming flying swords and spirit arts. Thud! 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 He retreated repeatedly and his organs were immensely shaken, almost shifted out of position even. Suzumo spat out a huge mouthful of blood. Sima Ji roared in laughter. Suzumo, you're nothing without that secret skill from earlier. Foo-foo. Perfected being Kang Lang sneered, even if you can kill early or mid-stage golden cores with your carnate spirit weapon, you are still a foundation establishment cultivator after all. There's no way you can withstand the might of late-stage or perfected golden cores. You really think you can kill me with those skills of yours? Perfected being Kang Lang continued laughing coldly. Suzumo was unmoved. Perfected being Kang Lang was not wrong. Even if he was at extreme foundation establishment and had the support of the coiling dragon seal, in terms of strength, he could only match against mid-stage golden cores at best and he wouldn't be able to deal with those at late stage. In that previous attack, a few perfected golden cores had attacked and Suzumo was injured on the spot, unable to endure it. However, he was someone who did both immortality and demonic cultivation. Even without taking on his demon form, Suzumo's physique and bloodline was still enough to crush all other cultivators of the same realm. Even perfected golden cores would not be able to escape death if Suzumo closed in on them. He was invincible in melee combat. If anyone else had received the injuries he took, it would definitely affect their combat strength. However, Suzumo's physique was way too strong and his regeneration capabilities were shocking. After consuming the blood-flesh elixir made of dragon flesh in the human Emperor's palace, he attained greater mastery of the orifice clearing section and was only a step away from condensing a demon inner core. Within a couple of breaths, Suzumo's injuries were already mostly recovered. Foo-foo-foo-foo. Smiling, he stood up and his tendons and bones sounded at the same time. Not only did his aura not drop after getting injured, it was even getting stronger and the glint in his eyes intensified. He was like an ancient demon that wanted to devour people. Chapter 481, Frightening. Chapter 481, Frightening. The battle on the Foundation Establishment battlefield had already stopped. The Foundation Establishment cultivators of Blood Crow Palace and the other 4 major sects were scared out of their wits by Suzumo's methods and did not dare to advance. Clang! Clang! Suzumo beckoned gently and the 18 flying swords that were streaking around the Foundation Establishment battlefield returned to him, hovering above his head and buzzing loudly. Candlelight sword formation, condense. Right after, the 18 flying swords gathered together with their tips pointing outwards in unison, forming a gigantic sword-shaped circular disc. 18 rays of sword chi were released like a blazing sun and was extremely dazzling. Kill. Propping the seal with his left hand, Suzumo held his saber with his right and flapped his spirit wings, charging forward with the candlelight sword formation above him. Swoosh. 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 Flying swords tore through the air one after another, sharp and dense as raindrops. Spirit arts exploded, covering the skies as they arrived. Suzimo was calm and seemed composed. With his spirit wings coupled with divine steed fleeting alongside his spirit perception that was gained from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, his movements were unpredictable. At times, he would be light as a feather, and at others, he would be swift as lightning. No one could read him at all. Shifting nimbly in the air, his tendons and bones constricted and expanded, allowing him to shock everyone by producing motions that were far from ordinary. Like anacondas, snakes, apes and horses, Suzimo kept closing in on the distance between him and the golden cores. You! A late-stage golden core looked at Suzimo, who was charging at him, and his eyes were widened in disbelief. Was that even a human? He could not imagine how a human could contort their bodies to that extent and dodge such an intense flurry of attacks while rushing over without any injury. He no longer had the chance to think about it anymore. Swoosh! Suzimo raised his saber instantly. Countercurrent surged forth. After entering Extreme Foundation establishment, Suzimo's spirit energy grew much richer and he could not release saber forces in succession. That golden core was shocked and found himself having difficulty breathing, as though a surging wave was rushing at him. Thunder sounded inside his ears and the tide arrived almost instantly. Go! This man was a late-stage golden core after all and composed himself swiftly. Maneuvering his flying sword above his head, he circulated his golden core and spirit energy gushed out. No matter what, the strength of a late-stage golden core was not something a foundation establishment cultivator could handle. As long as he could withstand a move or two till the attacks of the others arrived, his enemy would naturally be trapped. Suzimo smiled faintly with a hint of ridicule in his eyes. To him, the way the golden core changed tactics was full of flaws. Suzimo's seemingly unstoppable saber suddenly stopped and was only an inch away from the man's flying sword. Swash! Swinging his wrist, the angle of his slash changed. Suddenly, the massive blade of Blood Quencher turned extremely flexible, like ripples on the surface of water. It wrapped around the flying sword and sliced the person's throat gently. Right after that insane toughness, it turned extremely flexible. There was no sluggishness at all and the process was smooth as water. That person's eyes dimmed and a gash appeared on his throat. The next moment, his head was lopped into the air as blood gushed out in a terrifying manner like a fountain. Melee combat was the most dangerous and one would be dead with a single misstep. Suzimo had been through countless battles in his cultivation journey and he was extremely experienced. While the strength of late-stage and perfected golden cores was strong and could even injure or threaten his life, even the physique of a perfected golden core could not match up to him. That was an advantage he had that could make up for his inferior strength. As long as he closed the distance between them, even perfected golden cores could not escape death. You had once told Suzimo that demonic cultivators are the best at killing people above their levels. That was the logic in that statement. After killing someone, Suzimo did not have to pause at all as he used the candlelight sword formation and coiling dragon seal to smash against some incoming flying swords and spirit arts from early and mid-stage golden cores. At the same time, he dodged the attacks of late-stage and perfected golden cores, fleeing away to kill at the other side. A golden core could not react in time and was closed in by Suzimo, who raised his coiling dragon seal to smash down on the former's head violently. The person's head was smashed and his entire body ripped into pieces with fresh blood flowing everywhere. He died on the spot. Swerving within the crowd, Suzimo did not bother to fight against late-stage and perfected golden cores forcibly at all. The moment he missed an attack, he would flee instantly without lingering. Even when dozens of golden cores attacked at the same time, they could not keep Suzimo to a single spot. A moment later, Suzimo was only filled with a couple more superficial wounds that healed within the blink of an eye. However, more than 10 golden cores on the side of Bloodcrow Palace had already died. Everyone was getting more fearful. This man was way too frightening. He already possessed the capability to kill golden cores without even forming a core of his own. Furthermore, he was battling dozens of golden cores and yet, instead of being disadvantaged, he was slowly controlling the situation. This man looked to be in his 20s. How did he possess such terrifying combat talent? Kill. Seizing an opportunity, Suzimo took a few strides forward and arrived before Sima Ji. Lifting his coiling dragon seal, he smashed it down at the latter's head. The coiling dragon seal shone with a bright golden light and let out a thunderous bang as it landed. Boom! The seal landed with a frightening aura. Suddenly, a vicious glint shone in Sima Ji's eyes as he said icily, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Swoosh! Sima Ji circulated his golden core to its limits and a phenomenon suddenly appeared behind him. Searing flames burned more than 100 feet tall, letting out a scorching heat. Swiftly, he engulfed Su Zimo with a blazing momentum. It was a golden core phenomenon. The reason why Sima Ji endured till this point was because he wanted to kill Su Zimo thoroughly with his golden core phenomenon. However, Su Zimo did not avoid nor dodge as his bloodline raced. He pushed down his blinding coiling dragon seal violently like it was a blazing sun. "You must have a death wish." Sima Ji roared and his golden core phenomenon intensified. Boom! The coiling dragon seal collided against the power of the golden core phenomenon and a deafening bang was produced as their powers ran rampant. The instant of the collision, the momentum of the flames was actually repressed by the coiling dragon seal. Since he was extremely close to the sea of flames, Su Zimo could only grit his teeth and endure the incoming blaze. He channeled his bloodline and spirit energy to fight against it repeatedly. Both sides exerted their strength. The coiling dragon seal was less than an inch away from Sima Ji's head, but it could not go down further due to the obstruction of the golden core phenomenon. A moment later, a gigantic flame burned over, engulfing Su Zimo's arm completely. The fire sizzled. In an instant, Su Zimo's arm was charred and his flesh ripped apart in a terrifying manner. Sighing internally, Su Zimo withdrew himself and retreated. It was no wonder why golden core phenomenons were the strongest techniques available to golden cores. Even with his carnate spirit weapon and tsunami bloodline, he could not manage to break through the defenses of the golden core phenomenon. Swiftly, Su Zimo avoided the attacks of many golden cores and escaped. His arm was still burning with fire and his flesh was already in a blooded mess. There was no way to purge golden core phenomenons except for extreme means. "Ha ha." Sima Ji laughed loudly. "Sima Ji, your arm is already crippled." "Not necessarily." Su Zimo harumphed coldly and took a deep breath of air. The spirit sea in his dantian roared and his bloodline surged, cruising through his limbs towards his injured arm. Clack! The flames extinguished and smoke billowed. The cultivators watched with widened eyes. The next moment, something even more frightening happened. The charred black flesh on Su Zimo's arm fell off gradually and fresh, tender meat started growing with a shiny luster. It was an uproar. Chapter 482, Great Qian Empire. Chapter 482, Great Qian Empire. "Father, are you really going to just sit by idly and watch?" Ji Yaoshue had a blaming look in her eyes the way she looked at the emperor of Great Ju. The assertiveness in her eyes was overwhelming and she already possessed a sort of dominance that was unique to the emperor. "First, Su Zimo is my life-saving benefactor. Putting the past aside, even in the ancient battlefield this time round, I would have died in the hands of Jun Hao and the others if it wasn't for him. Second, he's the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Ju and would definitely become a great weapon refinement master in the future with limitless accomplishments. Third, and most importantly, he has unlocked 9 spirit meridians and has reached the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment realm. This is the second person in history who has done so apart from the human emperor. Is a paragon as such not worthy of the Great Ju's attention?" Ji Yaoshue's 3 sentences caused the emperor to turn entirely silent. In reality, the third point was still the one that moved the emperor the most. If he could take an Extreme Foundation establishment cultivator under his wing, there was a huge possibility that the Great Ju dynasty could one day defeat all the other 3 dynasties and reign over the entire north region of Tianhuang mainland. However, Blood Crow Palace's lord was from the witch race, one of the primordial 9 races. If he dealt with this wrongly, it wouldn't be impossible for the entire Great Ju dynasty to be destroyed into ruins, let alone rule over the north region of Tianhuang mainland. More than 10,000 years ago, a massive entity stood on this piece of land, known as the Great Qian Empire. The title of an empire was only given if one could rule over all the dynasties and vassal states of a single region in Tianhuang mainland. The might of the Great Qian Empire was far greater than the current Great Zhou dynasty, and its territory was vaster. There were even multiple supersects of Tianhuang mainland within the territory of the Great Qian Empire. Even just within the Buddhist monasteries, 2 of them resided in the Great Qian Empire. The Tao of Buddhism was glorious in the Great Qian Empire. However, it was unfortunate that a catastrophe arrived. Almost overnight, the Great Qian Empire was dismantled and even its capital was turned into ruins. Because of that, the north region of Tianhuang mainland fell into chaos and the flames of war raged everywhere. Devastation spread and millions of lives were lost with corpses scattered all over the place. From then on, the Great Qian Empire disappeared with the winds. The place was in chaos and many vied for supremacy. 4 great vassal states conquered many places and rose swiftly, turning into the Great Zhou, Great Shang, Great Xia, and Great Yu dynasties of the north region of Tianhuang mainland today. In other words, the 4 dynasties were established on the ruins of the Great Qian Empire. The progenitor of that catastrophe was one of the primordial 9 races. The patriarch of the Great Zhou dynasty has lived for more than 10,000 years and personally witnessed the destruction of a great empire. As such, he viewed the primordial 9 races with a sense of trepidation. As a Dharma characteristic expert and a Tao lord, it wasn't difficult for the patriarch to come forth and take down Bloodcrow Palace's lord who was at void reversion. However, if he were to incur the wrath of terrifying existences such as the mighty figures or patriarchs of the witch race, even if there were 10 great Zhou dynasties, they would all have to be destroyed. The battle was turning more intense and things were not looking good on the side of Ethereal Peak. It was also difficult for Su Zimo to hold the fort single-handedly. No matter how strong he was, he could not affect the direction of victory for the nascent soul battlefield, and as such, he could not decide the fate for Ethereal Peak. Ji Yaoshue was anxious. When she saw her father remaining silent, as though he was reminiscing about something, she could not help but say, "Father, what are you hesitating for? If you can't make a decision, how about sending a message to the Patriarch of Great Zhou and ask him to make one?" Returning to his senses, the Emperor shook his head and replied firmly, "The Patriarch will definitely not agree to this." "How do you know if you hadn't tried?" She looked at her father without blinking. The Emperor could clearly sense the anxiousness and worry within Ji Yaoshue's heart. However, she was trying her best to control herself and she wasn't offensive through her words either. He sighed internally. In truth, among the younger generation, the one who resembled him the most and had the most potential to be the emperor was not the many princes, but this daughter of his. However, Ji Yaoshue was a woman and could not inherit his legacy. I'll admit that Su Zimo is an unprecedented paragon who managed to reach the extreme foundation establishment realm, second only to the human emperor. His future accomplishments are unpredictable, but... The emperor changed the topic and said deeply, "Su Zimo is about to die and he has no future. As such, what accomplishments do we have to speak of? This time round, both Ethereal Peak and Su Zimo are stuck in this calamity and I can't think of any way in which Ethereal Peak is able to break out of this situation." Ji Yaoshue said in a slight huff, "Nothing is absolute." The emperor replied grimly, If Su Zimo manages to tide through this calamity, then..." He did not continue but merely raised his head and looked at Ji Yaoshue deeply. At that moment, he made a decision in his mind. If Su Zimo could survive this calamity, he would go against all odds and pass the throne down to Ji Yaoshue. On the other side of the forest. There's no chance left. Ji Yushi shook her head. Since that person didn't come, it's over for Ethereal Peak. Auntie Ji Yu, what other way is there to save him? Demoness Ji frowned deeply. I'm at late-stage nascent soul and even if I step in, the most I can do is help stabilize the nascent soul battlefield. However, the old beast of Ethereal Peak up above the clouds can no longer hold on. Ji Yushi replied regrettably, "It's a pity that as the second person in history to reach the extreme foundation establishment realm, Su Zimo is about to die without the chance to grow further." Demoness Ji's eyes dimmed. Ji Yushi sighed. The impression left on the cultivation world by that catastrophe 10,000 years ago is way too deep. No cultivator or sect is willing to make an enemy as strong as the witch race just for the sake of Ethereal Peak. Beneath Ethereal Peak, blood flowed in rivers and the corpses were stacked like mountains. On the Golden Core battlefield, Suzimo made use of his strong physique and terrifying movement techniques to sustain in the fights continuously, ensuring that they did not lose. However, Ethereal Peak was already completely defeated on the Nascent Soul battlefield. There were more than 100 Nascent Souls, but more than half of them had already died. The remaining Nascent Souls were wounded and could only struggle to defend while being steadily defeated. It was only a matter of time before Ethereal Peak was annihilated. The situation of the old Immortal Crane above the clouds was even worse. To begin with, the old Immortal Crane did not have long to live. Unless she progressed in her cultivation realm, she would have only held on for a few dozen more years even without this calamity. Although her true form was a Bai-Fang, a pure-blooded ferocious bird, she was already old and her combat strength was not even half of when she was at her peak. Of the 5 void reversions that were fighting in the battle, one of them was even from the witch race. By this point of the battle, the old Immortal Crane was already at the end of her road. Wounded all over, her gaze was dimmed and her feathers shed endlessly. Even the flames on her body were starting to extinguish. Blood Crow Palace's lord waved his bone staff and shot forth an extremely evil blood arrow. The old Immortal Crane was unable to dodge in time and an additional blooded hole the size of an arm appeared on her wings. A sizzling sound was produced from the wound and it ate at her flesh nearby. Oozing with thick blood, the smell was pungent as the old Immortal Crane grunted. Immediately after, the attacks of the remaining 4 void reversions landed on the old Immortal Crane. Poof! Poof! 2 more wounds appeared on her body and blood gushed like a stream. The old Immortal Crane's body almost exploded and one of her legs was snapped. It was a tragic sight as she swayed, about to fall. The old Immortal Crane had protected Ethereal Peak for thousands of years ever since the founder master passed away. She had truly given it her all and fought to the very last moment without backing off. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was heartbroken when they saw that. Senior Crane, Sect Master Ling Yun exclaimed miserably. The outcome was decided. The moment the old Immortal Crane falls, all the other Ethereal Peak cultivators would be akin to fish on a chopping board, helpless to being slaughtered. Foo. Blood Crow Palace's lord sneered, "Old beast, I've already told you. Today, I'm going to massacre Ethereal Peak from top down, leaving no one alive." Chapter 483, Black-Robed Man. Chapter 483, Black-Robed Man leaving no one alive? Suddenly, another voice could be heard from above the clouds. It was deep and a little hoarse. Although it wasn't loud, it reverberated through everyone's ears. Who would dare appear at a moment as such? All the cultivators looked over instinctively. From the horizons, a man in black robes strode over in an unhurried manner. Initially, it was just a blurry figure. However, he arrived in the blink of an eye. Everyone on the battlefield was surprised. That person walked extremely slowly as though he was taking a leisure stroll. However, by arriving instantly, he created a strong visual impact. Now that he was so close, everyone could finally see clearly. He had long shoulder-length black hair that fell freely like a waterfall. His face was extremely sharp and angled and he possessed a frosty expression, emitting an aura that was equally cold. For some reason, after the black-robed man appeared, everyone on the black-robed man, including the 5 void reversions above the clouds, felt a sense of trepidation. There was no reason behind it. They merely felt fear and trepidation upon seeing that man. Be it the Golden Core, Nascent Soul or Void Reversion battlefield, all the cultivators stopped what they were doing and looked over instinctively. "You've come." The old Immortal Crane had a conflicted expression and sighed gently when she saw who it was. It was clear from the old Immortal Crane's tone that she knew the person. Everyone from Ethereal Peak, Sect Master Ling Yun included, were in a daze. "It's him." Suddenly, among the dozens of Ethereal Peak Nascent Souls left, an old man who was clearly at the end of his life exclaimed, glaring at the black-robed man with his cloudy eyes. "Atechi's back." The Nascent Soul old man shivered emotionally. "Little Yi, You've still got 3 years to your lifespan. Shifting his gaze, the black-robed man looked at the nascent soul old man and said calmly, "Little Yi." Su Zimo and the other cultivators of the younger generation were confused. However, Sect Master Ling Yun, Xian Yi, and the others shuddered. The name of that nascent soul was Ning Yi, and apart from the old immortal crane, he was the oldest Grand Elder of Ethereal Peak with a lifespan of over 1,000 years. Golden cores had lifespans of 500 years. Nascent souls had lifespans of 1,000 years. Void reversions had lifespans of 5,000 years. Almost all the cultivators in the generation of that nascent soul old man had died of old age, leaving him. If the black-robed man before them addressed Grand Elder Ning Yi as Little Yi, didn't that mean that he was even older than the latter? The black-robed man should have been someone from more than 1,000 years ago, and that was why the generations from Ling Yun onwards did not recognize him. Ling Yun's heart skipped a beat when he saw the reaction of the old immortal crane and Grand Elder Ning Yi, as though he recalled something. Could it be him? Xian Yi and the other golden cores gasped, exchanging glances. They had already guessed it. Outside Ethereal Peak, Ji Yaoshua looked at the newcomer with a confused expression and turned to ask, "Father, who is that? He seems to have some sort of a relationship with Ethereal Peak and is rather formidable." "I don't recognize him." The Emperor shook his head. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat as he thought of someone. Someone that he had never seen before but have heard of from the legend. The Emperor murmured, perhaps he should be the only one who would care nothing about the witch race. On the other side, Ji Yushi and Demonis Ji heaved sighs of relief when they saw the black-robed man appear. Clapping, Demonis Ji laughed. "Hehe, this senior still chose to appear." Ji Yushi said, "With him, there's nothing to worry about for the Void Reversion battlefield. If I step in to stabilize the nascent soul battlefield, they should be able to tide through this calamity. I won't be heading over since Father's watching from the other side." Demonis Ji blinked. She nodded and took out a mask from her storage bag. Wearing it on her face, she turned into another person and headed to the battlefield. Far in the depths of the capital of Great Ju, an old man sensed something and suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light shone from his glabella and a small person the size of his palm flew out, glowing with a radiance. It was his essence spirit. A mysterious energy fluctuation spread forth from the radiant little man. His spirit consciousness was spreading. A moment later, the radiant little man returned to the old man's glabella and vanished. Letting out a long breath, the old man murmured softly, "To think that he would have returned. There's no wonder why he's the #1 paragon of Great Ju back then. After not seeing him for 1,000 years, he has already cultivated to that point." The skies above Ethereal Peak. The black-robed man surveyed the surroundings. When he saw the corpses strewn all over, his expression did not change and he merely commented indifferently, "It's truly been a long time since it was so crowded at Ethereal Peak." When they heard that, Xian Yi and the others were even more certain about this man's identity. Su Zimo frowned. No matter how he looked at it, the black-robed man seemed like he had a deep connection with Ethereal Peak, as though he was a cultivator from it in the past. However, Su Zimo could not sense any bit of emotions coming from that man. He had no reaction even after seeing Ethereal Peak cultivators dead all over the place with their corpses forming mountains. Indifferent, cold-blooded and heartless. That was the first impression the black-robed man gave Su Zimo. 1,000 years ago. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind as he recalled a person. The first time he heard about that person was through the disheveled old man. Thereafter, he heard Senior Crane mention a little about him back in Thunderclap Valley. This was the owner of the mystic gold silk armor, someone who was invincible across the Foundation establishment and Golden Core realms in the north region of Tianhuang mainland in the past. When this person joined Ethereal Peak, his method of dispelling the 8 distresses formation was by killing everyone. Because he was cold, heartless and extreme in his ways, the moment he showed signs of turning into a fiend, he was locked in Thunderclap Valley to reflect in seclusion. This was also the same person who found the Void Thunder manual in the ancient battlefield and placed it inside the mystic gold silk armor to await someone with affinity. Later on, This man descended into the Tao of the fiend and betrayed the sect. He was the terrifying expert 1,000 years ago. Now, he has returned. The 5 void reversion experts above the clouds, Bloodcrow Palace's lord included, had grim expressions and were sizing up the black-robed man the entire time. Each of them felt danger exuding from that man. A moment later, Dao being Jing Ming of Iridescent Cloud's palace narrowed his gaze and asked with cupped fists, "Fellow Daoist, may I know what is your name and what sect you are from? Also, why are you interfering in this matter?" The black-robed man shifted his gaze towards Dao being Jing Ming before saying slowly, "Do you think someone like you is worthy to know my name?" Before his words were finished, the black-robed man's glabella shone brightly and a blood beam shot forward. A terrifying aura burst forth. Bloodcrow Palace's lord and everyone else were shocked as they scurried to retreat. Poof! Immediately after, right in front of everyone, Dao being Jing Ming's head exploded as though it was a watermelon. He died on the spot and his essence spirit didn't even get the chance to escape. He was dead. A void reversion expert died just like that. A dead silence crept through the air above and beneath Ethereal Peak. This was a truly savage man who was decisive to kill. The black-robed man was emotionless after killing a void reversion as he turned towards the other 4 expressionlessly with a gaze cold as ice. Chapter 484 Azura. Chapter 484 Azura. The death of Dao being Jing Ming frightened the other 4 void reversions and their hairs stood on end. The expression of Bloodcrow Palace's lord turned extremely terrible as he glared at the black-robed man. His gaze was dark with a faint green light. It was extremely difficult for one to die once they were at void reversion realm. Although nascent souls could cultivate essence spirits, their essence spirits had impurities and were in turbid states, causing them to be extremely fragile. Without any protection, upon leaving their physical bodies, their essence spirits would be akin to babies situated in forests and could die at any moment. A strong gust of wind, an exposure to the blazing sun or even any slight activity could injure the essence spirit. If they met with any misfortunes, their essence spirits would be destroyed instantly. The death of one's essence spirit was the true meaning of death, whereby it would be useless even if their physical bodies remained intact. However, it was different at void reversion realm. By comprehending the heaven and earth and making use of the dharmic methods to visualize the essence spirit, nascent souls could cultivate their essence spirits continuously to remove the impurities within it. Eventually, after obtaining some pure young spirit, they would be able to enter the void reversion realm. That was the meaning of the saying cultivating one's spirit to return to the void in the cultivation world. At void reversion realm, one's essence spirit would resemble the physical body of the cultivator. Flawless without impurities, they do not fear the scorching sun, heavy rains, or misfortunes. They would truly be able to break out of the restraints of one's body and roam the world, traveling everywhere. At that point of the essence spirit's cultivation, it would be akin to a corporeal body outside of the cultivator. There was another saying in the cultivation world of one's spirit leaving them and taking form. By leaving them, it referred to the essence spirits exiting their bodies, and taking form referred to the corporeal bodies outside of their physical self. In the ancient era, void reversion realm was also known as the corporeal spirit realm. 4 void reversion Tao beings, even if their bodies were destroyed, if they reacted fast enough and sent their essence spirits out of their bodies, they would be able to survive. Although their bodies were destroyed, the presence of their essence spirit was equivalent to their survival. The black-robed man killed a void reversion with a single thought, and the latter vanished on the spot without a chance to let his essence spirit escape. That single move caused the hearts of Bloodcrow Palace's lord and the other 3 to skip a beat. They were inevitably feeling fearful. Turning slightly to the side, the black-robed man looked at the utterly wretched and wounded old Immortal crane who was swaying unsteadily nearby. He swiped his hand on his storage bag. Instantly, an elixir the size of a longan appeared and there were a few patterns on its surface, emitting a rich medicinal fragrance. That is, True Fire Sect's Tao being Liao Yuan narrowed his eyes with an alarmed expression. Vitality Reprisal Elixir. Bloodcrow Palace's lord said it word by word. The moment those words were uttered, although the others did not have much of a reaction, All the nascent souls and void reversions present were shaken. Dao being Liao Yuan glared at the elixir in the hands of the black-robed man with an extremely scorching gaze, wanting nothing more than to devour the latter's hand right now. A grade 5 elixir, the Vitality Reprisal elixir, was created by the Elixir Emperor of the ancient era, and it illustrated the meaning of lucidity for one's final moments. No matter how badly injured a void reversion was, as long as they weren't dead and consumed a Vitality Reprisal elixir, they would definitely instantly invoke a tremendous amount of vitality and their injuries would be completely healed. The Vitality Reprisal elixir had long been lost on Tianhuang mainland. It was akin to a second life of a cultivator. The black-robed man sent the Vitality Reprisal elixir before the old immortal crane through a single thought. Dao being Liao Yuan and the others were green with envy. A precious elixir as such was given out just like that. The few of them revealed jealous expressions and their eyes shone with vicious glints. They even had thoughts of snatching it over for themselves. The old immortal crane had a conflicted expression and did not take it over immediately. Blood Crow Palace's lord sneered, "That old beast is at the end of her lifespan and is on the brink of death. She won't be able to live for much longer even if her injuries are fully recovered." While the Vitality Reprisal elixir could heal one's injuries almost immediately, it could not add on to one's lifespan. It was also the same reason why the old immortal crane did not take the elixir immediately. The Vitality Reprisal elixir was way too precious and it was a waste for her to use it. "I won't take back anything I give out," the black-robed man said indifferently. "You don't have to have any considerations as well. The reason why I'm giving you the elixir is to sever the karma between us." "But," the old immortal crane sighed gently, "the Vitality Reprisal elixir is too precious and rare. As a void reversion, you need it as well. I don't, because no one can injure me." The black-robed man's tone was calm without any fluctuations, as though he was talking about something that was only logical. Instantly, the entire place went silent. Almost everyone was stunned by the casual majesty revealed by the black-robed man through his words. Looking at the old immortal crane, the black-robed man continued, "You still have a sliver of hope." The old immortal crane understood what the black-robed man meant. Her sliver of hope was to recover her wounds by consuming the Vitality Reprisal elixir and make use of this great battle to advance in her cultivation realm. As long as she made a single step of advancement, her lifespan would increase exponentially and she would be averted from the imminent crisis of her expiring lifespan. As for Ethereal Peak, it would be blessed with the rise of a Dharma-characteristic realm pure-blooded ferocious bird. Little Crane cried softly with a concerned expression, urging repeatedly. Sect Master Ling Yun, Su Zimo, and everyone else looked at the old immortal crane, hoping that she could make use of this opportunity to gain rebirth through nirvana. The old immortal crane took a deep breath before nodding and reaching out for the Vitality Reprisal elixir, swallowing it. The moment it entered her mouth, a tremendous amount of vitality burst forth like a tornado, surging through all her limbs to every single part of her body. The wounds on the old immortal crane were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Su Zimo and the others were elated when they saw that. If the old immortal crane could advance a step further, it would be a blessing in disguise. Although Ethereal Peak suffered great losses due to this calamity, if the sect had a Dharma-characteristic pure-blooded ferocious bird as its support, it would definitely be the strongest among the 5 major sects and it would only be a matter of time before its rise. The black-robed man shifted his gaze towards Blood Crow Palace's lord and the others. "I know who you are." The palace lord harumphed coldly. "There aren't many cultivators at Void Reversion Realm with strength like yours. You should be the titular disciple of Azura sect, this generation's Azura." The black-robed man was expressionless. To think that the Azura notorious for killing would have crossed the North region to be a busybody here, Fufu, the palace lord sneered. The black-robed man was still silent and his expression did not change. The palace lord gripped his fists and repressed the killing intent in his heart, saying darkly, "Azura, since you insist on interfering with this matter, I can take a step back. However, that person must leave with me." He pointed towards Su Zimo who was beneath Ethereal Peak. Instantly, everyone from Ethereal Peak felt their hearts sink in despair. It was already unexpected that the black-robed man was able to protect Ethereal Peak. However, he had no relationship with Suzimo, so how could he possibly offend someone of the witch race just for the sake of a Foundation establishment cultivator? The black-robed man shifted his gaze towards Suzimo. For some unknown reason, Suzimo felt a mysterious feeling inside his heart. The gaze of the black-robed man was as though he was looking at his successor of the younger generation and was extremely odd. After pausing for a moment, the black-robed man finally spoke with a single word. No. Everyone was shocked. Nobody expected that he would choose to offend someone of the witch race just for a Foundation establishment cultivator. Furthermore, he was so decisive in his rejection. Chapter 485, Killing Indiscriminately. Chapter 485, Killing Indiscriminately. Azura, you should know of my background. Let's each take a step back. The palace lord said with a dark gaze, all I want to do is take away that Foundation establishment lad. That has nothing to do with you. If you continue pushing your luck. Before the palace lord could finish, the black-robed man let out an impatient expression and interrupted, I want to push my luck. What can you do about it? Everyone was in an uproar. He was way too savage. He did not leave the other party a single way out at all. His reputation truly precedes him. It's no wonder why he was invincible across the Foundation establishment and Golden Core realms on Tianhuang mainland back then. He's truly way too savage, Xianyi lamented. The disheveled old man sighed. He is fearless even when the great Zhu royalty does not dare to interfere. He's truly incredible. It's just a pity that he has turned into a fiend, otherwise, Liu Hui did not continue, but her meaning was clear. At this point of his cultivation, Suzimo was no longer as resistant and negative towards the fiend sects. Iridescent Clouds Palace, Southern Mountains sect, True Fire sect and Azure Frost sect could be considered to be part of the Immortal sects as well. They were self-proclaimed to be righteous and viewed slaying demons and fiends as their responsibilities. But now that Ethereal Peak was in trouble, those sects chose to take advantage of the opportunity and kick it while it was down and out. How were their actions different from the fiends? The black-robed man was someone of Azura sect, a fiend sect. Yet, upon knowing that Ethereal Peak was in danger, he rushed over here from thousands of miles away across the Middle Continent and North region. Who were the true immortals and who were the true fiends? Suzimo found himself agreeing more and more with Demonist G's words. The Tao of fiends was not the Tao of evil, but one of obsession and extremity. At that moment, the disheveled old man asked, the sect has severed connections with that man a long time ago. Who was the one who informed him? That's right. Xianyi exclaimed softly, I heard that Azura sect is situated in the middle continent of Tianhuang mainland and is most likely millions of miles away from Ethereal Peak. Even for a void reversion at full speed, they would need close to a year to arrive. How did he manage to get here in time? Sect Master Ling Yun's heart was filled with the same doubt. Didn't that mean that someone had managed to locate the black-robed man a year ago and told him the news of the possible calamity that was about to befall Ethereal Peak? Ling Yun was certain that nobody in Ethereal Peak, including the old Immortal Crane, had contacted the black-robed man. Who was it then that managed to spread the news over to him? Suzimo was curious as well when he heard the discussions of the Peak Masters. At that moment, a gaze lingered on him for a brief moment. Sensing it, Suzimo looked up into the air. In midair, a woman in a gauze top had appeared unknowingly. She was not a cultivator of Ethereal Peak and had extremely ordinary looks. However, her figure was voluptuous and curvy. A single look was enough to seduce anyone. Suzimo had never seen that woman before. However, for some reason, he felt a sense of familiarity. He went deep in thought. Above the clouds, the black-robed man was overbearing and instantly, the palace lord's expression turned extremely terrible. Right now, he was in a difficult position. The palace lord declared coldly, Azura, although you're the titular successor of the fiend sects, all of us are at void reversion realm and I'm even someone of the witch race. We're not going to be afraid of you. That's right. True Fire sect's Dao being Liao Yuan said deeply, there's 4 of us void reversions here, don't go overboard, fellow Daois. Southern Mountains sects Dao being Laoyang and Azure Frost sects Dao being Han Ming looked at the black-robed man with cold gazes. They were tense and ready to strike at any moment. You're still not leaving? The black-robed man's eyes were initially closed. However, they suddenly opened up and he spoke. That sentence was uncalled for and sounded ridiculous. Yet, the palace lord and the other three of them felt chills run down their spines as their pupils constricted. Raising his head, the black-robed man had an indifferent gaze. Very well, don't leave then. All of you can stay here. Before he finished his sentence, his glabella shone and he sent forth another killing move. Asuras don't open their eyes, but if they do, they kill. Instantly, the world changed. The black-robed man did not do anything and his glabella merely shone with a blood-colored light, but a sea of blood instantly appeared in the void, emitting a nauseating stench as it surged towards the palace lord and everyone else. Those methods had already surpassed the knowledge of Su Zimo and the other golden cores. This was a fight between the essence spirits. A faint green light shone from the palace lord's glabella and a gigantic, menacing skull was formed in midair. It opened its blooded mouth and swallowed the sea of blood in huge mouthfuls, the same way a whale swallowed water as though it wanted to devour the entire sea. At the same time, the glabellas of Dao being Han Ming, Dao being Laoyang and Dao being Liao Yuan shone brightly as their spirit consciousnesses were released, conjuring multiple phenomenons. Swoosh! A massive fireball that was like a blazing sun surged towards the blood sea. Boom! A mountain materialized and descended, attempting to suppress the raging tides of the blood sea. Swash! Snow filled the entire place and froze everything. Layers of frost appeared on the surface of the blood sea. It was an attack of the spirit consciousnesses. These were killing moves that could only be used after entering the void reversion realm. By conjuring phenomenons with their spirit consciousnesses, these were corporeal illusions that attacked the other party's essence spirit directly. The defending cultivator could only block them with their own spirit consciousnesses. A fight between essence spirits was extremely dangerous and a single misstep would lead to death. Previously, Dao being Jing Ming of Iridescent Cloud's palace was attacked by the black-robed man's spirit consciousness and instantly, his head exploded and his essence spirit was destroyed, resulting in his death. Kill. Right now, the black-robed man was fearless despite facing 4 opponents. Shouting, his eyes shone ferociously and he exuded a shuddering killing intent. In midair, the gigantic skull was swallowing the blood sea at a much slower speed and was shivering. Crack, crack, crack. A series of cracks appeared on the surface of the skull. The palace lord's expression changed. At the same time, a sinister roar echoed from the depths of the blood sea. Bang, bang, bang. The ice on the surface of the sea suddenly cracked as one after another, corpses with terrifying auras whirled their fists and destroyed the frost. Leaping out of the sea, they roared from the depths of their throats and floated in the blood sea. It was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. No matter which faction they were from, all the cultivators in the vicinity of Ethereal Peak felt chills upon seeing that. Those methods were truly shocking and struck fear through everyone. The blood sea surged and created massive waves, threatening to devour the entire world as it howled. Dao being Han Ming gasped. Sheeing. The fireball in midair was drowned by the blood sea and its flames were extinguished. Dao being Liao Yuan shuddered and blood drained from his face. In the spirit consciousness of Dao being Liao Yuan's glabella, an essence spirit with his exact appearance burned with dense flames. Gradually, it dimmed and the flames on its body were extinguished. Dao being Liao Yuan's life force was severed as he fell from midair. He was dead. Even though he was fighting against 4 people, the black-robed man managed to kill a void reversion in reverse. Boom! A thunderous bang sounded from the unyielding mountain in the middle of the blood sea as it was attacked by the corpses repeatedly. Before long, the mountain crumbled and was devoured by the blood sea. At the same time, Dao being Laoyang's essence spirit exploded in his spirit consciousness. He was devoured by the blood sea and turned into one of its corpses. Another void reversion had fallen. Chapter 486 Unable to leave. Chapter 486 unable to leave. The moment the 5 void reversions above the clouds started fighting, the nascent soul battlefield continued on as well. Both factions were in the heat of the battle. You guys, go and kill Suzimo. The faster, the better. Realizing that something was amiss with the situation, the Blood Crow King did not dare to be careless and ordered 10 nascent souls for that task. In terms of numbers and strength of nascent souls, Blood Crow Palace possessed an absolute advantage. From the side of Ethereal Peak, the remaining dozens of nascent souls that were led by Sect Master Ling Yun were filled with injuries and exhausted. They were almost unable to fight on anymore. The Blood Crow King transformed into his true form, which was a pitch-black crow with bloodshot eyes, and led the remaining nascent souls in a fiery battle against Ling Yun and the others. Unable to withdraw themselves from the situation, Ling Yun and the others could only watch as the 10 nascent souls charged towards Suzimo. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. No matter how strong he was and how many trump cards he had, he could not withstand the might of nascent souls. At Nascent Soul Realm, one could cultivate an essence spirit and could make use of the heaven and earth powers to release dharmic art. Even the simplest dharmic art was more than enough to kill Suzimo, who was at Foundation Establishment Realm with ease. As the 10 nascent souls charged towards him, Suzimo conjured hand seals in midair. A terrifying energy fluctuation spread through the void. Not daring to be careless, Suzimo released his spirit wings and chanted a sutra internally. He was already prepared to unleash the secret skill of the fiend sects, Blood Escape, to flee far away. He could read the situation clearly. The black-robed man had terrifying strength and was extremely domineering. As long as he could survive a little longer and wait till the void reversion battlefield to settle down, Blood Crow Palace was bound to lose. All of a sudden, a slender figure appeared in front of Suzimo. It's her. Suzimo furrowed his brows slightly. The person before him was the seductive woman with the gauze top. You must have a death wish. You're asking for death. The 10 nascent souls that were charging over shouted and had already released the dharmic arts from their hands. There were razor-sharp long swords with rainbow ripples, crystalline fingers as thick as stone pillars, horrifying fists as heavy as mountains. The dharmic arts filled the skies and surged over, almost engulfing the gauze-top woman and Suzimo entirely. The gauze-top woman's expression was unchanged and her eyes flickered with ridicule. Suddenly, she smiled brilliantly and a bedazzling and seductive glint shone from her eyes. Although the gauze-top woman had ordinary looks, her smile caused all the stars and moon to dim in color. Her eyes shimmered like the surface of water, causing everyone's hearts to skip a beat. In the blink of an eye, all the dharmic arts vanish. All the cultivators were shocked by the methods of the gauze-top woman when they saw that. As for Suzimo, he had a vague guess about the gauze-top woman's identity after a moment of contemplation. Only a cultivator of the fiend sect's pure maiden sect could bewitch all living beings with a single action and smile. Although this woman wasn't Demonis G, she definitely had a deep relationship with the latter. By adding those information together with this person's cultivation realm, her identity was revealed almost instantly. It was the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House, Gu Shi. With the secret skill of Pure Maiden Sect, Gu Shi removed all the dharmic arts and seized the opportunity while the 10 nascent souls were distracted to raise her palm. Instantly, 10 cold flashes of light shot into the glabellas of the 10 nascent souls. After a brief pause, the eyes of the 10 nascent souls dimmed and they fell from midair one after another lifelessly. For nascent souls, they won't die even if their hearts were crushed. The true weakness of a nascent soul was their essence spirit. Gu Shi's counterattack did not show any mercy and she crushed all 10 of their essence spirits instantly, causing them to die on the spot. Suzimo nodded silently. It was no wonder why she was of the fiend sects. All the itinerant cultivators of Blood Crow Palace and the nascent souls of small sects could not deal with the secret skill of Pure Maiden Sect at all. Back in the ancient battlefield, Demonis G was restrained by the paragons of the Buddhist and Immortal sects and she even suffered a loss against the successor of Diamond Monastery. However, if she were to face these Foundation Establishment cultivators here, a simple smile and wink from her could charm them into losing their minds. The Blood Crow King and the others were extremely grim when they saw the 10 nascent souls die. I don't believe that we won't be able to kill a mere Foundation establishment lad despite our numbers. The Blood Crow King had a vicious gaze as he grit his teeth, prepared to attack personally. The gauze-top woman spoke up. Her voice was charming but her tone was indifferent. Everyone, you don't have to waste your energy with me around. None of you will get past me. Perfected being Kang Lang and the others had indignant expressions. What sort of merits and capabilities did Su Zimo, a mere Foundation establishment cultivator, have such that two experts showed up in succession to defend him? Boom. Suddenly, a bang sounded from above the clouds. All the nascent souls stopped subconsciously and turned to look. They saw True Fire Sect's Dao being Liao Yuan and Southern Mountains Sect's Dao being Laoyang fall one after another. Suddenly, the tides changed on the battlefield. Sensing that something was amiss, some people made an instant decision to retreat with the chaos and flee into the distance. Although the Palace Lord and Dao being Han Ming were able to defend against the impact of the black-robed man's blood sea, they were swaying and their expressions were pale as they grunted. Dao being Han Ming was thoroughly subdued by the methods of the black-robed man and kowtowed, declaring with a trembling voice, "Please be appeased, fellow Daoist. I know now that I'm in the wrong and I'll leave right now, never taking another step onto Ethereal Peak for the rest of my life." When they heard that, everyone from Ethereal Peak were emotional and almost wanted to roar into the skies as a pent-up frustration was released from their heart. The feeling of a void reversion forced to the state of acknowledging his mistake while swearing never to step foot onto Ethereal Peak again for the rest of his life was ecstatic. Right then, the black-robed man's voice sounded above the clouds once more. "It's already too late for you to leave now." It was dead silent above and beneath Ethereal Peak. Everyone was astounded by the black-robed man's aura. Acknowledging his mistake. Swear. None of that mattered now. Even if he wanted to leave now, he couldn't. Dao being Han Ming seemed to have been scared as well as he trembled. "What do you mean by that? IV already apologized." He was stuttering by now. "It's no use speaking now. Die." The black-robed man pointed at his glabella. Instantly, it shone brightly and formed a blood sea vortex. Reaching out, the black-robed man actually withdrew a saber from the blood sea vortex. It was initially extremely small but by the time it was out completely, it had expanded with a torrential killing intent. There were a series of blood patterns on its blade. The black-robed man flicked his wrist and his saber shook. Instantly, all the blood patterns rose, as though they were veins on the blade, and the stench of blood filled the air. He uses a saber. Su Zimo froze momentarily when he saw the black-robed man withdraw a saber and a thought flashed through his mind. Before he could think about it properly, his attention was drawn by the terrifying methods of the black-robed man. The black-robed man took a step forward and slashed in reverse. It arrived instantly and engulfed Dao being Han Ming, sealing his escape path. "Don't go overboard." Dao being Han Ming shrieked and tapped his glabella, withdrawing a shimmering flying sword. At the same time, he withdrew a shield from his storage bag and injected dharmic power into it, causing it to expand and hover over his head. Chapter 487 Remnant of the Witch Race. Chapter 487 Remnant of the Witch Race. Clang. The saber sliced the flying sword into two the moment they clashed. Dao being Han Ming grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. The flying sword was his life force dharmic weapon and was connected to his essence spirit. With his life force dharmic weapon crippled, Dao being Han Ming's essence spirit received an immense impact and was severely injured. The black-robed man's saber technique was still sharp and his momentum did not pause, cutting down heavily onto the shield in midair and letting out a deafening sound of metal screeching. Boom! The shield exploded into pieces. A terrifying power surged into Dao being Han Ming's body and his organs, bloodline and bones were disintegrated into pieces due to the sharpness of the blade. Poof! 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 A series of blood mists spewed out from Dao being Han Ming. A single slash was all it took to sever Dao being Han Ming's vitality entirely. A glowing little man scurried out of the top of Dao being Han Ming's head frantically. His essence spirit was exiting and escaping into the distance. However, it was a pity that the two of them were extremely close. Dao being Han Ming's essence spirit did not manage to escape far before the black-robed man caught up to it, grabbing it and crushing it with his palm. After losing the protection of his body, the essence spirit was too weak and could not withstand a single attack. In the blink of an eye, the void reversions of the 4 major sects had already died in the hands of the black-robed man, leaving Bloodcrow Palace's lord. The palace lord had just conjured his dharmic technique when Dao being Han Ming had already died. Gritting his teeth, the palace lord waved his bone staff and uttered an indecipherable incantation. The skull on top of the bone staff gradually filled with blood and 2 scarlet blood beams shone from its eye sockets, as though it was alive. Bloodbat, form. The palace lord roared in rage and pointed his bone staff at the black-robed man. Buzz. Buzz. The skull opened its mouth and blood-colored bats flew out one after another continuously. Like a swarm of locusts, they charged towards the black-robed man in a dense pack. This was a secret skill of the witch race. All of those were blood-sucking bats, and if a cultivator was trapped in their encirclement, their blood would be sucked dry within a single second. How dare the light of a firefly try to compete against the shine of the moon for glory? The black-robed man sneered. He did not retreat or dodge the looming swarm of bats and instead, took a step forward and slashed again. The weather changed. That single slash seemed as though it had unleashed endless hell. The sky and earth collapsed. Endless firestorms descended from the skies and the ground ripped apart, causing scarlet lava to gush out. The vast land was filled with ugly scars and corpses were strewn everywhere. The blood bats cried endlessly upon entering that endless hell and they disappeared before they could even get close. A look of panic flashed through the palace lord's eyes. Swoosh. In a flash, the black-robed man had already arrived before the palace lord. He slashed in reverse at an extremely fast speed and the sound of ghosts wailing could be heard as his saber sliced through the void. The palace lord felt his heart skip a beat. With no time to think, he could only receive the attack with his bone staff. Scree. A jarring sound was let out as the saber glided across the bone staff. A faint imprint was left on the bone staff. The palace lord shuddered and a mouthful of blood rushed up his throat before he swallowed it back forcefully. Although the witch race was one of the primordial 9 races, they did not have strong physiques and neither did they specialize in melee combat. The palace lord was already severely injured from that single slash. With each breath he took, he could taste the damp stench of blood and feel a ripping pain in his lungs. It was proof that his organs were already injured. If the battle continued, it may very likely result in irrecoverable wounds for him. The palace lord burst in retreat and waved his bone staff, setting up faint green layers of barriers before him. As if oblivious to them, the black-robed man charged at them readily. Crack, crack, crack. The faint green barriers shattered repeatedly and could not stop the black-robed man at all. The black-robed man's gaze was icy cold and his killing intent was chilling as he moved like a phantom. Sensing the killing intent of the black-robed man, the palace lord was finally nervous and shouted with widened eyes, "Azura, I'm someone of the witch race. If you dare take my life, you will bring about destruction for Azura Sec." Su Zimo was secretly alarmed when he heard that. The tone of the palace lord was extremely tough and firm, as if he truly meant it. Could there truly have been super sects that were destroyed by the primordial 9 races on Tianhuang mainland? Do you think that a remnant of the witch race like yourself is enough to threaten me? The black-robed man took a stride forward with a frosty glare and slashed at the palace lord once more. Clang. Although the palace lord managed to defend against it, he could not endure it anymore and spat out a huge mouthful of blood. His organs had shifted positions and were almost ruptured. The words remnant of the witch race caused a commotion in the crowd. In the cultivation world, ferocious beasts that had impure bloodlines were called remnant beasts. In other words, the palace lord was not completely considered as someone of the witch race and could only be considered as a half-being. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled that back then at the primordial ruins, the divine dragon said something similar, berating that the palace lord had an impure bloodline and was merely a bastard child. The palace lord's expression turned extremely harrowing after the black-robed man exposed his background. The black-robed man sneered, "Notwithstanding the fact that you're a remnant of the witch race, even if someone who was truly of the witch race came forth, I would dare to kill him as well. There's no one in this world that I, Yang Beichen, wouldn't dare to kill. It was only at this moment that Su Zimo knew that the name of the terrifying expert from 1,000 years ago was Yang Beichen. The palace lord did not dare to linger and bit his tongue, spitting out a mouthful of essence blood to release his secret skill. He turned into a streak of light and fled into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Where can you run to? Yang Beichen's eyes lit up with a dark glint. He slashed forward and it seemed to cross the voids, landing heavily on the palace lord. There was nowhere to escape. A stream of blood gushed out. The palace lord's body was split into two instantly. His essence spirit left his body and hovered in midair. It was a little man that shone with a dim bloodlight and looked exactly the same as his physical body. Blood tribute. The palace lord's essence spirit escaped and let out a spirit consciousness fluctuation. The essence spirit traveled through villages where there were countless innocent mortals. There were farmers who were plowing the fields, muscular men who were chopping firewood, mothers preparing to cook and children who were playing merrily. All of those living beings suddenly froze, as though they were engulfed by some mysterious power. In the blink of an eye, their bodies withered at a visible speed, turning into streaks of blood light as their life forces surged into the essence spirit that was escaping in midair. The eyes of the palace lord's essence spirit shone brightly as it recovered rapidly. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was heartbroken at the sight of that. Hundreds of thousands of innocent mortals were met with the calamity, turning into dried corpses and died in miserable manners. It was the same situation that Su Zimo and the others encountered at Linfeng City in the past. Yang Beichen chased in pursuit with his saber and took huge strides, crossing through the voids. Unfortunately, the distance between them increased further and further. When void reversions lose their bodies and were left with their essence spirits, although their combat strength were weaker, their speeds were at least doubled without the restrictions of their flesh. Furthermore, the palace lord released the evil blood tribute technique and replenished a massive amount of energy, allowing him to escape from Yang Beichen's pursuit before long. Azura, one day, I'll definitely make you pay for destroying my physical body today. Ha ha ha. The blood light disappeared into the horizon, leaving nothing but a sinister laughter. Chapter 488, You Sure Are Bold. Chapter 488, You Sure Are Bold. Bloodcrow Palace's lord fled more than 1,000 meters away. The remaining cultivators were dumbfounded. This was supposed to be a calamity for Ethereal Peak, and yet, the tides turned immediately after the appearance of a cultivator. The advantage of Bloodcrow Palace and the other four major sects had disappeared entirely. Su Zimo's gaze burned bright like a torch and he swept past the crowd. He could not find perfected being Kang Lang and sneered internally, You sure are quick to run. Many cultivators yelled and fled everywhere. The Bloodcrow King gazed above the clouds at that terrifying figure standing in midair. He had a venomous look that lingered for a brief moment before he turned to escape. All of a sudden, Yang Beichen turned around and his gaze was extremely sharp, landing on the Bloodcrow King instantly. You still dare to harbor killing intents towards me? Instantly, the Bloodcrow King felt chills run down his spine and his limbs went cold. The blood within his body seemed to have stopped flowing. You sure are bold. A massive shout echoed through the clouds, reverberating through the ears of many cultivators in a deafening manner. Immediately after, a gigantic saber beam descended from the skies and swept through the void, as though it wanted to slice the world apart. Boom! The ground shook and the mountains trembled. The saber beam burst into the crowd that was escaping and blood mist spewed everywhere. The Bloodcrow King had just transformed to his true self and was about to fly into the skies when he was cut down by Yang Beichen's slash without a corpse left. Long blood-colored ravines were left at the foot of Ethereal Peak as a torrential killing intent surged into the skies. They were filled by countless corpses and looked terrifying, like blood scars on the ground that everyone was forbidden to enter. More than 10 nascent souls died at the very least because of that slash. There were even more Golden Cores and Foundation Establishment cultivators that were beside the blood ravines and died, unable to withstand the killing chi that was sent forth from the saber. Finally, Ethereal Peak's calamity came to an end after Yang Beichen's slash. The cultivators of Ethereal Peak that survived felt a sense of relief after a major calamity. However, immediately after, when they saw the corpses that were strewn at the foot of the mountain, they felt a tragic sadness. All of those were their sect mates. They had grown up together in Ethereal Peak, cultivating and slaying evil while protecting the masses for many, dozens, and even hundreds of years. But now, many of them were dead because of a massive battle and they could never hear from them ever again. This was the cultivation world, which was incomparably cruel. For the first time, Suzimo felt that the cultivation world was much more savage and had more bloodshed than Kang Lang Mountain Rain. After consuming the Vitality Reprisal Elixir, most of the old Immortal Crane's injuries had already recovered and it had gotten a new life. However, a look of weariness could still be seen from the eyes of the old Immortal Crane. This battle had expended most of her life's essence and vitality. If she could not advance a step further, she would have to pass away here. Maintaining its ferocious bird form, the old Immortal Crane stood at the peak of Ethereal Peak on one leg and closed its eyes to cultivate. A power was rumbling within its body, raring to spew out. Old skin started shedding from its body and its green feathers were incinerated. However, right in front of everyone, new skin regrew alongside green feathers that shone with a shiny luster. The flames that were originally extinguished from her body had appeared once more. Although the flames were small, they emitted a scorching temperature and were growing steadily. The void around the flames were already starting to contort due to the heat. The old Immortal Crane's condition was gradually turning better. The little crane cried softly and jumped in joy. Sect Master Ling Yun swallowed a mouthful of elixirs and started managing the situation, dragging his injured body while focusing his spirit. First, he ordered the cultivators on the battlefield to return to the sect and treat their injuries. Next, he requested for the Chi refinement warriors who did not take part in the battle to come forth and clean up the battlefield. Although he was severely injured after experiencing such a calamity, Ling Yun did not panic and displayed strong leadership in controlling the situation. The sect started moving in an orderly manner after his instructions were pumped out. "Fellow Daoist, please wait." At that moment, when Ling Yun saw the gauze-top woman turn to leave, he called after her immediately and bowed deeply, saying in a sincere manner, "Thank you for your assistance, fellow Daoist. Please stay a couple of days in Ethereal Peak so that we can host you properly." "There's no need." The gauze-top woman waved it off with an indifferent expression. Sensing the firmness in the gauze-top woman's attitude, Ling Yun did not force things and cupped his fists. "May I know what's your name and what sect you are from? I'm unable to leave now because our sect has just been through a huge calamity. However, I'll definitely pay a visit personally to your sect in the future to express my thanks." "There's no need for thanks either." The gauze-top woman shook her head and turned to Suzimo. "The reason I stood forth this time round was because I was bequeathed to repay a favor." Upon hearing that, Suzimo no longer had any doubts. She gauze-top woman was definitely Gu Shi. The person who bequeathed her should be Demonis G. Instinctively, he turned to look around but did not catch sight of Demonis G. Ling Yun followed the gauze-top woman's gaze and froze momentarily. "Zimo." The elders of Ethereal Peak revealed odd expressions when they heard that as well. A nascent soul as powerful as such came forth just to repay a favor for a Foundation establishment cultivator? The gauze-top woman continued, "If you want to express your thanks, do it to him." With that, the gauze-top woman did not linger and flew away. Ling Yun and the others looked at Suzimo with endless admiration in their eyes, as though they had just discovered the most precious treasure in this world. Even without the gauze-top woman's remark, Suzimo had done great merits in this battle. Furthermore, he was at Extreme Foundation Establishment 1. This was the second person after the human emperor in history to have achieved that. If he was already able to kill Golden Cores and possessed such terrifying potential and combat strength at Foundation Establishment realm, his future accomplishments would definitely not be inferior to that person above the cloud. Of course, the Azura of the Fiend sects was still the key to them turning the tides and securing victory. Prior to this, everyone in Ethereal Peak harbored immense hatred towards those of the Fiend sects. As people of the Immortal sects and the Path of Righteousness, They viewed the extermination of fiends and demons as a personal duty and would definitely not want to be associated with any one of the fiend sects. But now, after this incident, everyone had complicated feelings towards those of the fiend sects, or at least, towards Yang Beichen. It did not matter whether he betrayed the sect or he was an evil fiend. What was undeniable was that Ethereal Peak owed him a life-saving debt. Ling Yun wanted to head forth and express his thanks. However, when Yang Beichen remained thousands of feet up above the clouds, Ling Yun couldn't reach that height given his cultivation realm. Yang Beichen's hands were behind his back and he had a cold expression, giving off an aura that forbade people from approaching him. A Grand Elder shook his head and said, "Forget it. Even if you head up, given that person's cold and aloof nature, he wouldn't pay any attention to you." That's right. After all, we are all considered to be of the younger generations compared to him. Senior Crane is probably the only person in the sect who is qualified to speak to him, another Grand Elder added. Ling Yun nodded. Right then, Yang Beichen, who was initially up above the clouds, suddenly descended. Instantly, he arrived before everyone else and looked at Su Zimo, saying indifferently, "Su Zimo, follow me." With that said, he turned and headed in the direction of Ethereal Peak's Thunderclap Valley. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was shocked. The Grand Elders who spoke earlier on almost bit their tongue as their eyes widened. Did the two of them know one another? Chapter 489, Saber Test. Chapter 489, Saber Test. Everyone from Ethereal Peak exchanged glances speechlessly. When they recalled how firm Yang Beichen was in rejecting the Bloodcrow Palace's lord's request in taking Su Zimo away, their minds starting reeling. The attitude of the fiend sect's Azura towards Su Zimo was rather strange. It did not seem as though he merely cherished the fact that Su Zimo was at Extreme Foundation establishment. Is he thinking of taking Su Zimo with him to Azura sect? A Grand Elder frowned in deep worry. After all, Su Zimo's potential was way too great and there was a chance that Ethereal Peak would rise in glory if he remained in the sect. Let's not think too much about it. Even if that's what he wants, there's nothing we can do and there's no one who can stop him either. That's right. In the void not far away, everyone from the royal family of Great Jew watched on with shocked expressions, taking a long time to recover. Ethereal Peak suffered great losses for that battle. However, the remaining cultivators, be it at Foundation Establishment, Golden Core or Nascent Soul Realm, had gone through the baptism of blood and life and death and would definitely grow to be the strongest supports of Ethereal Peak in the future. This calamity would only cause Ethereal Peak to turn even stronger. Without any accidents, the old Immortal Crane would also advance a step further to become a Dharma-characteristic ferocious bird. One could almost predict that Ethereal Peak's reputation would grow after this battle and many cultivators in the territory of Great Jew would head over due to their great name. Ethereal Peak would rise swiftly. As for the other four major sects, they would have to leave with defeated spirits. Notwithstanding the fact that their void reversions were dead, they had countless nascent souls, Golden Cores and Foundation Establishment cultivators who were severely injured or dead as well. It was a great loss for their sects. Be it their cultivators of the younger generations or their top experts, the four major sects won't be able to challenge Ethereal Peak any longer. The fact that they were not annihilated despite the circumstances is proof of how much providence is shining on them. At the very least, for the next 1,000 years, Ethereal Peak's position would most likely be unshakable. The Emperor of Great Jew lamented. Upon returning to the capital, he was prepared to send cultivators over to Ethereal Peak with a huge gift of plenty of elixirs. Let's return. Waving his arm, the Emperor led the crowd back. Su Zimo followed Yang Beichen into Thunderclap Valley. Waving his arm, Yang Beichen set up a barrier that isolated the sounds of rumbling thunder outside. Thereafter, he turned to look at Su Zimo quietly with a scrutinizing gaze. "You are the one that obtained the secret skill inside the mystic gold silk armor?" Suddenly, Yang Beichen asked. Su Zimo nodded. "Thank you, Senior." Yang Beichen pouted his lips. The Void Thunder Manual is a secret skill that's said to be the Thunder Emperor's compilation of his life's work before his ascension back then. Unfortunately, I only managed to obtain a page of it in the ancient battlefield. The Thunder Emperor. It was no wonder why the demonic chi in Su Zimo's bloodline could be purged just through the mantra of a single page. It was because the Void Thunder Manual had such a powerful origin. A moment later, Yang Beichen asked, "You were the one who obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance in the ancient battlefield?" "I was." Su Zimo admitted to it. The Sea Calming Manual had been lost for many years, and it was normal that the cultivators of the Great Zhou dynasty could not recognize it. However, Azura sect was one of the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, and Yang Beichen, who was before him, was an expert at the Void Reversion realm. It was only natural that Su Zimo's saber technique was recognized by the latter. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he recalled the thought that he did not complete earlier on. 1,000 years ago, the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea, Azura sect, paragon who used a saber. All the clues that were laid out before him pointed out to an incident in the past clearly. Senior, you were the Azura sect paragon who obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance from the ancient battlefield 1,000 years ago, the tidal manual? Su Zimo blurted out. Yang Beichen nodded. Suddenly, Su Zimo was enlightened. It was no wonder why Yang Beichen stared at him earlier on with such an odd expression, as though he was looking at a successor of the younger generation. It was not only because he was a disciple of Ethereal Peak and had obtained the Void Thunder Manual. It was because one after another, they obtained the inheritance of the Saber Emperor as well. Go on, attack. Let me see how much of the Saber Emperor's inheritance you managed to comprehend. Yang Beichen raised his palm lightly and endless spirit chi gathered towards his palm. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a sinister saber. No longer speaking, Yang Beichen attacked immediately after. Su Zimo's reaction was extremely fast and he whipped out his blood quencher. Attacking upwards, he released the Sea Calming Manual's countercurrent right away. Clang! The two sabers collided and let out a crisp sound, causing sparks to fly everywhere. The power of the attack was not heavy. Su Zimo could clearly feel that Yang Beichen had repressed his power countless times in order to test his saber. Yang Beichen's attack had already reached the level of force. After that attack, Yang Beichen was expressionless and flicked his wrist. The next attack had already arrived stealthily. His saber technique was blurry and unpredictable, yet, its killing aura was instantaneous and shuddering. Not good. Su Zimo's heart almost exploded. Against that killing intent, Su Zimo truly thought that Yang Beichen was about to kill him. Instinctively, he unleashed his spirit wings and was about to retreat backwards. However, the moment his spirit wings were summoned, they dissipated and turned into specks of light that scattered in the void. Needless to think, that must have been done by Yang Beichen. Su Zimo buckled his knees and channeled his bloodline, wanting to dodge backwards. Immediately after, to his horror, he realized that there seemed to be 3 walls erected on his left, right and back. He could not move and could only stand motionlessly on the spot. Use your saber. Yang Beichen's voice sounded coldly, or die. Nobody could question the killing intent of the fiend sect's Azura. He had said previously that there was nobody he couldn't and wouldn't dare to kill in the world. An Azura did not require reason to kill. Yang Beichen's attack was one of the stances from Azura Saber. Azura sect's Fiend Heir, Bai Yu, had used it before in the ancient battlefield as well, and it was the exact same move. However, although they were exact, the might that was produced from Yang Beichen was worlds apart. That attack was ethereal and was imperceivable. Although Su Zimo felt so terrible he wanted to throw up, he had nowhere to retreat. Taking a deep breath, Su Zimo composed himself and closed his eyes instead, choosing to follow his heart. Suddenly, he slashed out at the void before him. It was the ripple stance of Sea Calming Manual. The entire void seemed to drawn in by that slash and spirit chi swirled, as though it was creating a massive vortex. Under Yang Beichen's pressure, the vortex stance had also reached the level of force. Although the saber was only slashing at an empty spot, it possessed a centrifugal power of attraction that instantly broke through Yang Beichen's Azura saber's intent state. The initially imperceivable saber was now appearing. Clang! The two sabers collided once more and retraced upon a single contact. A subtle hint of admiration could be seen flickering through Yang Beichen's eyes. "Carry on." His voice was still cold as ever without any emotions. The sea calming manual was a saber technique comprehended by the saber emperor at the seaside. Be it in terms of toughness or flexibility, it was majestic and overbearing, unlike Azura saber. Azura saber was a technique that was purely created for killing, and every single move was sinister and lethal. The two different techniques, one righteous and one evil, were supreme secret skills in the Tao of the saber. Yang Beichen continued attacking in succession, and the angles of his attacks were tricky. They withdrew, lifted, or were hidden. Every single attack was filled with boundless imagination that left one speechless. Against such a saber technique, Su Zimo could only deal with them using the ripple stance of the sea calming manual, fighting gentleness with gentleness. Su Zimo's ripple stance turned increasingly mature against that immense pressure, and a saber force that was akin to ripples on the surface of water started to appear gradually. Chapter 490, Tidal Manual. Chapter 490, Tidal Manual. A moment later, Yang Beichen retracted his saber and stood upright. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief, and he could barely contain the joy in his eyes. Apart from the final stance of the sea calming manual, which he was still unable to produce, he managed to comprehend the force levels of the other four stances completely. It was all because of the pressure that Yang Beichen gave him that he was able to comprehend them so quickly. Otherwise, even if he practiced against air for dozens of years, he might not be able to reach this step unless he had another opportunity. If cultivators wanted to grow, they would have to grind against the brink of life and death continuously. Of course, what truly brought joy to Su Zimo was not only because he managed to comprehend the realm of force. More than that, under the pretext that they were both on the same power level, he was not weaker than this number one paragon of Tianhuang mainland North region in the past in terms of his saber technique. Although Yang Beichen had been immersed in the Tao of the saber for countless years, Su Zimo was not disadvantaged. Amazing. Su Zimo was drenched in sweat and was invigorated. Yang Beichen's expression was cold and his gaze was calm, as though he could read Su Zimo's mind. "Do you think that you're incredible because you're able to defend against my attacks?" Yang Beichen asked indifferently. Su Zimo remained silent. During their previous exchange of blows, although Yang Beichen was repressing him the entire time, Su Zimo did not reveal any openings, and in fact, he managed to defend all of the former's various attack. However, Su Zimo was embarrassed to admit to something like that after Yang Beichen read his mind. Yet, Yang Beichen's next remark caused Su Zimo's heart to sink as chills filled his body. "Take a look at your body." Yang Beichen's eyes was shimmering with a hint of disdain. Furrowing his brows slightly, Su Zimo lowered his head and he froze up, his pupils constricting violently. Before he knew it, a series of cuts had already been made on the green robes in front of his chest. They intertwined near to his heart and formed a gigantic character for the word death. This. Su Zimo felt his limbs go cold. This meant that if this was an actual life and death battle, he would have died more than 6 times in that short exchange earlier on. The most frightening thing was that he did not notice it at all up till now. The more Su Zimo thought about it, the more alarmed he was. The pride and exhilaration he displayed earlier had vanished entirely. If there were no restrictions and he could rely on his movement techniques from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, his speed and his terrifying physique, Su Zimo might not lose. However, at the very least, he was completely defeated in terms of saber technique. Yang Beichen swiped his storage bag and 2 more ancient manuals appeared in his hands. He handed them to Su Zimo. Focusing his gaze, Su Zimo could not help but exclaim, "The Tidal Manual." The Saber Emperor left 2 inheritances in the ancient battlefield, one of which was the Sea Calming Manual which Su Zimo had obtained. The other one was the Tidal Manual which was taken away by Yang Beichen 1,000 years ago. Yang Beichen said, "The Tidal Manual is not a saber technique, but a secret skill with 9 levels to it. It was created by the Saber Emperor in the past while he was at the seaside, observing the ebb and flow of the tides. He combined that as a skill together with the Tao of the saber, and it possesses the obscurities of the universe. The tidal manual and sea calming manual complement and complete one another. After cultivating the tidal manual, you'll be able to utilize the might of the tide. At level 1, each time you make an attack, there will be an additional layer of power to it, and that's the tidal might. Suzimo seemed to have an understanding. Yang Beichen continued, at level 1 of the tidal manual, you'll experience a 10% increase in strength. At level 2, 20%. Don't look down on the percentages because in actual combat, the difference will be significant. Suzimo was secretly shocked. If he managed to cultivate to level 9 of the tidal might, it would be equivalent to an additional 90%, and that would be akin to twice of his strength. It was enough for him to overwhelm anyone else of the same cultivation rel. Of course, the most important use of the tidal might is to make up for the flaws of the sea calming manual. Yang Beichen explained, you are already extremely proficient in your first 4 stances. However, there is still some sluggishness in your transition between gentleness and toughness while changing stances. While ordinary cultivators are almost blind to these openings, you will be in danger of dying if you meet with people who are truly impressive. Suddenly, Suzimo was enlightened. Indeed, he had experienced slight sluggishness while he was practicing his saber techniques earlier on. However, when he battled in the ancient battlefield against the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects, nobody noticed those openings. As such, Suzimo did not pay much attention to it. He had not expected that his openings would be so fatal when they were exposed to true expert. Suzimo was immensely grateful. He had not thought that Yang Beichen would impart to him the tidal manual so easily without hesitation. Senior, I'll demonstrate the sea calming manual once and describe to you the details of it. Suzimo's thought process was simple. He wanted to impart the sea calming manual to Yang Beichen as well as a form of exchange. There's no need. Yang Beichen waved it off indifferently. I've already begun to comprehend my own Tao. In my eyes, the sea calming manual is no big deal. There was a hint of arrogance in Yang Beichen's tone. He was firmly convinced that he would definitely be an emperor in the future with accomplishments above the Saber Emperor. Suzimo did not press on further and took the tidal manual. When he saw the second ancient manual, he could not help but frown. Azura Saber? The other secret skill was Azura Sect's secret skill, Azura Saber. This. Suzimo was confused. By doing this, did it mean that Yang Beichen wanted him to join Azura Sect? Suzimo hesitated for a moment before returning Azura Saber. I haven't thought about leaving Ethereal Peak before. Senior, please take the Azura Saber back. Yang Beichen glared at him but did not take it back. Even if you don't join Azura Sect, you can take this saber manual to cultivate. Is this appropriate? Suzimo frowned. Usually, one would be severely punished and might even be killed if they imparted the secret skills of a sect. You're telling me that even though I dare to impart it to you, you don't dare to learn it? Yang Beichen sneered. Suzimo was silent. In the ancient battlefield, he had truly created quite a bit of trouble and there was nothing he wouldn't dare to learn. Furthermore, it wasn't as though Suzimo hadn't cultivated techniques of the Fiend sects before. Back in the river undercurrent, when he was stuck with Demonist G in that cramped stone coffin, he cultivated the blood refinement Fiend Sutra that was left inside. At that thought, Suzimo accepted both the ancient manuals. After pondering silently for a moment, he recalled something and asked, Azura Sect is located in the Middle Continent. Senior, were you able to arrive in time because Senior Jiu she sent you a message? Yang Beichen and looked at Suzimo with a strange stare. To think that this generation's pure maiden of the Fiend sects would have chosen you as her tripod. This was the second time that Suzimo had heard of the term. The first time was under the Human Empress Palace when Demonist G confessed to it after being questioned by the sealer of the Illusion Fiend cult. What's the meaning of being a tripod of the pure maiden sect? Suzimo could not help but ask. Yang Beichen did not reply. When Suzimo saw that, he suppressed the curiosity in his heart for now. He thought for a moment and asked again, why are all the sects, cultivators, and even the royal family of Great Ju so wary of the witch race? That cautiousness stems from a catastrophe that happened 10,000 years ago, Yang Beichen replied indifferently. Chapter 491, Secret of the Catastrophe. Chapter 491, Secret of the Catastrophe. 10,000 years ago, there was an overlord in the north region of Tianhuang mainland, and that was the Great Qian Empire. Its territories were vast and it was extremely powerful. Unfortunately, the center of the Great Qian Empire, its glorious capital, was turned into ruins overnight. Yang Beichen continued, not only that, the two Buddhist monasteries that resided in the territory of the Great Qian Empire and supported it were annihilated. 10,000 years ago, there were 8 Buddhist monasteries, not the current 6. Ah! Su Zimo was shocked and exclaimed softly. There were 8 Buddhist monasteries 10,000 years ago. A single catastrophe had not only turned an empire into ruins, it even destroyed 2 supersects of Tianhuang mainland. He could not help but ask, what sort of a catastrophe was it? Did it have something to do with the witch race? No. Yang Beichen shook his head. It was another one of the primordial 9 races, the dragon race. Su Zimo's mouth opened gradually in a slight daze. The dragon race. He had quite a bit of a feud with the dragon race as well. Yang Beichen continued, there were many rumors to why the catastrophe happened. However, the conclusion was that a certain dragon in the Dragon Bone Valley was enraged. Dragon Bone Valley? Su Zimo frowned slightly and he thought about the endless white bones he saw back in the primordial ruins. There was also a long sea of bones and a towering dragon carcass. The Dragon Bone Valley is one of the 9 forbidden grounds of Tianhuang mainland, Yang Beichen explained. Indeed. Su Zimo felt a sense of trepidation as he recalled his encounter in the Dragon Bone Valley back then. If not for the mysterious Lin Xuanji, he would have died there even if he had 10 lives. Suddenly, he recalled something that Yang Beichen said earlier and could not help but question in shock and disbelief. It was all because of a dragon? A single dragon was enough to bring the Great Qian Empire and 2 supersects to ruins, changing the state of Tianhuang mainland's north region entirely? That's right. Yang Beichen nodded. An ancestral-level divine dragon. As though he could tell that Su Zimo did not understand the concept of an ancestral-level divine dragon, Yang Beichen added, his combat strength can match the human emperor. Su Zimo was stunned. A moment later, Su Zimo composed himself and continued asking, how many ancestral dragons are there in the dragon race? No one knows. Yang Beichen replied, however, the ancestral dragons are not the strongest of the dragon race. The dragon race also has a dragon emperor whose power is far beyond the ancestral dragons. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt like he was being suffocated and was in immense pressure. If an ancestral dragon could fight against the human emperor, who in the world could stop a dragon emperor if it was born? Yang Beichen continued, the primordial 9 races are innately strong from birth and can wipe out almost everyone else at the same cultivation realm. Throughout history, there has been countless emperors, but among them, there are less than 10 emperors of the human race who can go against the emperors of the primordial 9 races. Su Zimo remained silent. That was the difference between them. Humans were born weak and that was a fact that couldn't be changed. The experts of the primordial 9 races are already able to fight against emperors of the human race when they were at the ancestral level. They did not even have to be emperors themselves. After a brief pause, Yang Beichen said, the reason why humans were able to win the ancient war was because of the birth of the human emperor. He was a supreme hero who shocked history and could look down on all other emperors. At the mention of the human emperor, even someone as prideful as Yang Beichen revealed a tinge of admiration in his tone. At that point, Su Zimo gradually understood. What the royal family of Great Ju was fearful about was not the Bloodcrow Palace's lord, but the true experts of the witch race. Bloodcrow Palace's lord is merely a remnant of the witch race with an impure bloodline. Otherwise, his combat strength wouldn't have been so pathetic. Now that his physical body was destroyed by me, he won't be able to recover in a short period of time, and Ethereal Peak is in no danger for now. However, Yang Beichen paused for a moment before changing the topic. You've been extravagant in your ways in the ancient battlefield, killing the fiend heir of malevolent Earth sect and destroying Poison sect while defeating Glass Palace. You'll have to watch out from now on. Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect are located at the north region of Tianhuang mainland. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Although no one else in Shentian City apart from Ji Chengtian and the others knew of his background, given the strength of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect, if they truly wanted to hunt him down, it would just be a matter of time. The only way for him was to hide in seclusion without coming forth. However, what worried Su Zimo even more was that Glass Palace's Pei Chunyu was severely injured and escaped into the Fog Valley with his fate unknown. There was a chance that he would have survived and made it back to Tianhuang mainland. That man was a latent danger. For the first time, Su Zimo felt that there were way too many latent dangers around him. Glass Palace, Malevolent Earth Sect, Poison Sect, Blood Crow Palace's Lord. The moment all of those latent dangers erupted, the outcome would be unimaginable. He had to get stronger as quickly as possible. With those latent dangers ticking down, the only shot he had at survival was to get stronger as soon as possible. Yang Beichen turned around to leave but paused for a moment before remarking indifferently, "You're at Extreme Foundation establishment and is the second person in history to do so apart from the human emperor. However, you have to understand that before you form a core, everything is merely a dreamscape. In the super sects of Tianhuang mainland, Foundation establishment cultivators are only outer sect disciples and they will only become inner sect disciples after forming a core. That was the difference between super sects and Ethereal Peak. In Ethereal Peak, golden cores could become elders. However, in those super sects, they were only inner sect disciples." Yang Beichen added, "I heard that Divine Phoenix Island produced a monster incarnate. Although you're at Extreme Foundation establishment, you're probably only on par with him." Su Zimo did not reply. He could not possibly divulge the identity of Divine Phoenix Island's monster incarnate. Everyone in the cultivation world knew right now that the Divine Phoenix Island's monster incarnate's right hand was a precious piece of Divine Phoenix bone. If the mighty figures and patriarchs of various factions were to come fight for it, no one could protect him at all. Additionally, although phenomenons are the strongest techniques available for golden cores, there's a difference in strength between the phenomenons. Yang Beichen said, "The golden core phenomenons you experienced earlier were the low-end ones with limited power. If you meet with golden cores with ancient phenomenons, even an early-stage golden core would be able to kill you." "Are all ancient phenomenons definitely strong?" Su Zimo asked with a frown. "The phenomenons that are cultivated by ancient emperors, mighty figures, and patriarchs have gone through the sands of time and are still not destroyed. Their legacy crosses time and it's only natural that their powers are incredible." Su Zimo asked again, "Are all golden core phenomenons cultivated by the later generations weaker than the ancient phenomenons?" Yang Beichen shook his head. "It's very difficult. All the cultivation techniques you're using right now has been passed down from history. As such, it's only natural that the phenomenons you cultivate can't break out of the shadows of the past ancient phenomenons that easily. If you can really create a mighty phenomenon that's able to compare against the ancient phenomenons, you'll definitely be recorded into the books of history and be nominated into the unusual phenomenon ranking." "Unusual phenomenon ranking?" Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Yang Beichen replied, "You should know that the ancient battlefield was formed from dimensional shards and is differentiated into different levels based on its stability." "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. Demonis G had told him about that many years ago. Yang Beichen continued, "Foundation establishment cultivators can be sent into the elementary ancient battlefield and it can be opened once every 10 years. The intermediate is more stable and can allow golden cores to cultivate within, opening up once per 100 years. In the intermediate ancient battlefield, there's an extremely famous divine ranking that has been passed down from history known as the unusual phenomenon ranking. The ranking list has a total of 108 positions and millions of golden cores fight for a spot. Only those that have their names listed on the unusual phenomenon ranking are befitting of the word paragon." Chapter 492, Divine Powers. Chapter 492, Divine Powers. Yang Beichen said, "I'm sure I don't need to elaborate more about the benefits of the ancient battlefield. Both you and I are beneficiaries of them." Su Zimo nodded. If he hadn't entered the ancient battlefield, there was no way he would have cultivated to his current cultivation realm within a short period of time. Be it the path of immortals or demons, Suzimo was already half a step through to creating a core. Furthermore, he wouldn't have been able to unlock 9 spirit meridians and reach the legendary Extreme Foundation Establishment realm. He wouldn't have had a chance to obtain the secret skill, Ancient Dragonification Manual, and the Carnate Spirit Weapon, the Coiling Dragon Seal either. Suzimo had truly benefited way too much from the elementary ancient battlefield. The intermediate ancient battlefield only opens up once every 100 years, and the unusual phenomenon ranking refreshes once per 100 years as well. Yang Beichen continued, apart from fame throughout the cultivation world, the higher one's name was on the ranking list, the more benefits they would obtain. There's a very high chance for one to obtain a massive opportunity and skyrocket from that point. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly asked, "Senior, what was your ranking on the unusual phenomenon ranking in the past?" "Number 1. Yang Beichen replied calmly, as though he was recounting something that couldn't be any more normal. All of a sudden, both Suzimo and Yang Beichen sensed something and turned around, gazing into the distance. On a mountain peak, the old immortal crane stood with bedazzling green feathers that burned with fiery flames. Its body seemed to have gotten much larger than before. The red crown on its head seemed like it was a massive fireball. It had broken through. The old immortal crane was already a void reversion pure-blooded ferocious bird to begin with. Now that it advanced a step further, it was akin to a Dharma characteristic Tao lord of the human race and had broken through the restraints of heaven and earth, breaking free from its imminent crisis of an expiring lifespan. Demons had an extremely different cultivation method from humans, and they did not have early, mid and late stages to their major cultivation realms. Therefore, demons would usually be stuck in a major realm for a long time and could not break through for hundreds or thousands of years. The good thing was that demons were innately strong from birth and they had a much longer than humans on the same cultivation realm. For example, the old immortal crane had been stuck in the void reversion realm for more than 1,000 years. However, once a demon achieves a breakthrough and breaks free of the shackles of heaven and earth, it would mean that they have advanced a major cultivation realm and their increase in strength would be utterly frightening. Prior to this, the old immortal crane had no chance of winning against Bloodcrow Palace's lord. But now that the old immortal crane had advanced and was equivalent to a human Dharma characteristic, she could kill the palace lord with ease. Suddenly, the old immortal crane opened its eyes and reared its head into the skies, crying. It was a piercing screech that reverberated through the world. An extremely terrifying aura burst forth from the peak of Ethereal Peak and started spreading out. All 5 peaks were shaken. The ancient forest shook and all the living beings within the radius of 500 kilometers sprawled on the ground, silent with fear. Instantly, the entire world went silent. Even the air around Ethereal Peak went still and the clouds stopped floating. Yang Beichen's pupils constricted slightly. Even he was feeling some slight palpitations through that power. Innate divine powers. Yang Beichen took a deep breath of air and murmured, "Is that what divine powers are like? It's truly strong. What are divine powers?" Suzimo could not help but ask. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had only heard of spirit arts and dharmic arts that were above the former. However, he had never heard of divine powers. Divine powers are even more terrifying than spirit and dharmic art. Simply put, divine powers goes beyond one's imagination and are the type of methods you only hear of in legend. Suzimo was shocked to hear this. It was even more terrifying than spirit and dharmic arts. Yang Beichen said slowly, "Lifting mountains and chasing the moon, that's a divine power. Plucking the stars from the heavens, that's a divine power. Incinerating the heavens and burning the seas, that's a divine power. Summoning wind and rain, scattering beams to form troops, those are all divine powers." Suzimo's mouth opened slightly and he could not contain the shock in his eyes. One could pluck the stars in the skies, one could boil the oceans and even burn the heavens. Everything was truly beyond Suzimo's imagination. A brand new cultivation that was vast and incredible started forming in his mind. It was something that invigorated him and made him look forward to. Suddenly, Suzimo realized. Although he had already started cultivating a long time ago, he had only just begun on the long path of cultivation. How do you cultivate divine powers? Su Zimo asked excitedly. Shaking his head gently, Yang Beichen replied, "You are too far from divine powers and even I'm unable to cultivate them. Void reversions are known as Tao beings. Thereafter comes the Dharma characteristic realm where they are known as Tao lords. Even after that is the conjoint body realm where one will be known as a mighty figure. Lastly, they will reach the Mahayana realm and be known as patriarchs. One is only qualified to cultivate the art of divine powers when they are at the Mahayana realm." Su Zimo was a little disappointed. He was only at Foundation Establishment realm right now, and even the Void Reversion realm was far from his reaches, let alone the Mahayana realm. However, on second thought, he exclaimed softly and asked with a frown, "However, Senior Crane has just broken through and is only equivalent to a Dharma characteristic. How is she able to comprehend divine powers?" "That's because she's a demon," Yang Beichen replied. After Void Reversion realm, demons would comprehend a divine power with every step they advance thereafter. The purer their bloodline, the more frightening the divine powers they comprehend would be. Suddenly, Su Zimo's eyes shimmered when he heard this, as he was enlightened about something. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness had a total of 9 sections. The 7th section, Core Formation, was equivalent to the human golden core realm. The 8th section, Yin Spirit, was equivalent to the nascent soul realm, and the 9th section, Yang Spirit, was equivalent to the Void Reversion realm. There was nothing to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness beyond that. Initially, Su Zimo could not understand why there were only 9 sections to the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness. But now, he understood that there was no need for any manuals and techniques after the Yang Spirit section. As long as he made an advancement after that, he would be able to comprehend his own innate divine powers. Su Zimo asked again, "Demons are already able to comprehend innate divine powers at Dharma characteristic realm. Since divine powers are so strong, how do human cultivators deal with them?" Yang Beichen replied, "Once a human enters Dharma characteristic realm, they would naturally undergo transformations and be able to sense heaven and earth while summoning supreme dharmic powers. At that point, the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that they conjure would be able to fight against the innate divine powers of the demon race." Su Zimo seemed to have an understanding. It was the same as when demons formed their inner cores. At that point, the strength and speed would increase exponentially and their physiques would reach a terrifying level of toughness that weak humans couldn't fight against. However, after the elites of the human race formed their golden cores, they would be able to produce golden core phenomenons. The immensely powerful phenomenons could enable them to fight against demons. From the point where they were enslaved in the primordial era to their rise in the ancient era, the cultivation methods of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taos of the human race had matured for a long time. The rise of the human race was definitely not due to luck. "I've already severed my karma, it's time for me to leave." Yang Beichen left a single remark and did not linger further, soaring into the skies before speeding into the distance. "Little Chen," the old immortal crane called out hurriedly when she noticed that. In the eyes of the younger generation, Yang Beichen was a cold and indifferent old monster. However, more than 1,000 years ago when he joined Ethereal Peak, he was still a child. The old immortal crane had seen him grow up and advance step by step. Yang Beichen's figure staggered for a brief moment but did not turn back. He continued heading forward and disappeared into the horizons before long. When he saw that, Su Zimo came to a sudden realization. The reason why Ethereal Peak lingered so long in Ethereal Peak after the battle was not merely because of him. Yang Beichen was worried about the old immortal crane's safety and was actually defending her in silence here. Given Yang Beichen's character, he would definitely not admit to something like this. The old immortal crane had a conflicted expression and sighed gently. Su Zimo could vaguely sense that there was something more as to why Yang Beichen betrayed Ethereal Peak and joined the Fiend sect, Azura sect, more than 1,000 years ago. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.